Yo, what the hell is up, my Zudes? I got a question to ask everybody in the room. Are you guys bricked up? Because I am effing hard right now. I just gotta say that. We're about to deliver a banger of an episode. We got the central bank digital currencies for dummies breakdown coming for you over the next 2, maybe 3 hours. We'll see.
Oh God, hopefully not 3.
It might be. We got a lot to dig into today. We're putting on our smart boy brains. I put on my shirt all the way buttoned up. You know, this is going to get fancy in here. We're going to be very intellectual. I keep on talking about how I was a history major, so I'm like, maybe I need to flex some of that now.
Oh, yeah. It's all coming out. It's all coming out. But yeah, without further ado, I'm your co-host, Robert Ware. Always been here, always will be. And across from me, we got...
Yo, what's up? It's your boy Crispy Grooves over here.
And then Adrian Grody, you already know me.
And of course, joining us is the classic...
What's good? Chris Martin.
Yeah.
The realtor or the musician, depending on how I know you.
And of course, running our boards today, the legend.
Hello.
Yo, how you doing? Taba here, as always.
What a squad, man.
Right, we got the real brain, the brain panel here going.
Dude, this is a Giga Brain episode.
The brainy bunch.
You know it's serious because we didn't get super high before this episode. We got Red Bulls. We're ready to go. Let me get you guys a little bit in focus because you're not in focus.
Yeah, See, I had a hard time with that.
Oh. That's a little better.
There you go.
There we go.
Okay, there we go.
Just turn it a tiny
Big
bit.
brains, big brain
Turn it
energy.
a tiny bit.
Yeah,
That's right.
we
There
had
we
so
go.
much big
Look at
brain
y'all.
work to do that we forgot to
There
turn
you
the
go.
cameras.
Beautiful.
No, look at that. Perfect framing. Y'all
Yeah.
are so handsome.
We were
All right.
researching up until the last possible second.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, we're gonna try to not be too much of a doomer episode. But we're just gonna warn you guys on what to do to not end up like some of the people that we're talking about today who try to fight against the wind.
It's an episode about bread, and it's also an episode about how to keep your head. So
And your bread. Yeah.
and your bread at the same time, you know, because the government, they love taking your bread, man. How much do you guys owe in taxes?
I'd rather not disclose, but it's a not zero number. I'll tell you that. I'll disclose that I'm about to do a 72-month IRS payment plan.
Oh, my.
Because it's going to take me several years to pay back 1 year of taxes.
All right.
Shout out.
Gee. All right. Fuck. Okay. Without diving in too far into it, is there anything else that we wanted to hit on before we get real conspiratorial and shit here?
Oh, I just want to say that if you're watching this episode, make sure you tune into the chat, you leave a little comment, you do a little like and subscribe, turn on that notification bell so you can know when the Zudes are bringing you more big brain content.
Yeah, and of course, we did just set up a little donation link. So, if you make it to the end of the video and, you think that we deserve it, go ahead and check out that link and maybe donate like $5 or something.
Dude,
grab us a coffee,
We're on coffee now.
Yeah, it's coffee.
That's right, even though we're drinking Red Bull.
Yeah.
Buy us a Red
Coffee's
Bull.
a morning drink, so
It can be whatever you want to buy us. Yeah.
Send us some digital currency, man.
yeah.
So, yeah. Speaking of which, so this whole episode today is about central bank digital currencies, what led up to them, where the money system has gone in the last 100 years or so. Kind of a little bit of a history lesson. We're tying it into all sorts of stuff, dude. We got crises involving tequila. We got crises involving housing. We got crises in is it crises? Crises. No, crises.
It's crises.
Yeah, dude. I know
mysterious,
words.
questionably Japanese men.
Yeah,
What?
right. Elusive Japanese men who
Elusive
choose to
Japanese
remain anonymous.
Oh, yeah.
Indeed.
I
Yeah.
believe it's chrysopi.
Chrysopi, that's the plural.
So let's see. Let's head to these current events real quick because we got a few things.
Jesus Christies, you feel me? A couple crises.
It's too much already.
So if you guys weren't aware,
Blasphemous.
there's two warring factions right now. We got the G7, which would include the United States and includes, I can't name them all,
Canada, the U.S., I think.
bunch of other ones that no one cares about. No, it's like Germany and UK
I
and
think
some other
Venezuela
ones.
might be in there.
What?
Oh yeah,
Not
they're pretty heavy hitters.
I think, but then also we've got BRICS. BRICS is like the new kid on the block. It's been around
Relatively,
for a few years, relatively, and so that's going to be Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, right?
Oh
Yeah,
man,
South
that's
Africa,
a five-finger death punch right
Yeah,
there. You feel me,
absolutely.
bro? That's a tough-looking band of misfits, you know.
They've got a better name than the G7.
They do. And another reason why we chose to cover this topic is because the BRICS conference is actually coming up here, I think, in maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, something like that.
Relatively soon here, yeah.
It's coming up pretty soon. And so we decided to, give a little bit of background information on that. Also, it's the fact that we've been living in an era of global financial turmoil for the past start of the decade. So, hey, might as well.
Yeah, kicked it off right.
Yeah, might as well learn about these massive institutions that are playing games with our livelihood. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
We're learning about where did the game playing begin. But currently, let's see if we want to bring up the our screen right here. And also, we got this new app called Obsidian, which we've used to make an entire conspiracy board, which you're just seeing one little piece of right now.
Yeah, exactly.
This is just a little tiny piece.
By the
We've got a
way-
whole schizoed out board. It's crazy.
Yeah, by the way, he just dropped the bomb there by telling you what we're actually using. So if you're wise, check it out.
Yeah, Obsidian.
It's really
I'm
cool.
still figuring out how to actually use it. So pardon my inaccuracy here. But so we got BRICS. So Russian President Vladimir Putin announced that the BRICS countries plan to issue a new global reserve currency and are ready to work openly with all fair partners. So
Right.
that's anyone and everyone.
Anybody and everybody. So
Who's
right
on the
out the
bad guy
gate,
side?
that's like contender number one, right? Do they actually have a name for that? I don't know if
what?
they do.
Oh, for their
BRICS currency. Yeah.
I don't think they have a name for the actual currency.
It should just
yet,
be
but-
BRICS. Yeah.
It's just quotes a new global reserve currency, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Right. So the point of this here too is to
GRS.
challenge the International Monetary Fund, who is currently the global reserve currency is in U.S. dollars because the IMF has had the monopoly on it ever since the end of World War II, which is a history we're going to get into shortly.
Oh yeah. And then so also recently you guys might have heard about Fed Now. Because we've been dealing with crazy inflation and stuff lately. This is kind of seems like the way forward for global, or not global digital currency, but at least for the US. This is what people have been warning about for a while. So what we got here, FedNow is a service developed by the Federal Reserve for depository institutions in the United States. It will enable individuals and businesses to send and receive instant payments. And FedNow is scheduled to begin formal certification of participants of the program in April 2023, with a formal launch planned for July 2023.
Yeah. So this is in beta stages right now.
Yeah. And then we've also got the Unicoin network, which I'm not that familiar with, but we'll get
more into that.
Daryl Hubbard here, the executive director of the DCMA, negotiates the development of the Unicoin network in partnership with China. And that's going to be a global decentralized digital financial services network, which is a whole mouthful of jargon there. But first, let's kind of bust it down sexual style, get some terminology going. So what the hell is money? And let me tell you, we're coming out, listen, we can bring you back to the full screen here for a second, because I want to let you guys know. The Zudes are coming from a completely unbiased place, because we are all broke as fuck. We don't have any stake in the dollar. We don't have any stake in Bitcoin. We don't have any stake in the fridge, even.
Exactly.
We don't have any. We got no stakes right now. But the stakes have never been higher because of what the global elites have planned for you and your money.
It's not just about the money. You'll soon learn.
So basically, here's our point here is that central bank digital currencies pose a significant long-term threat to individual freedoms. That's bad. The U.S., China, and other globalist groups have historically destroyed. I know, yeah, U.S. and China are the globalist groups have historically destroyed the economies of other countries that have challenged the existing major fiat currencies. And then also we've got centralized bank digital currencies, the long-term solution to eliminate any subsequent competition from alternative currencies, consolidate financial power, and lay the foundation for implementing social credit systems.
Basically, they're trying to pull a full-blown Scrooge McDuck. They want a swimming pool full of gold reserve, and you don't get any.
And in a classic Scrooge McDuck move, they will convince you that it is in your best interest every step of the way. Yeah,
That's right.
Indeed.
Yep.
Yes, indeed. Crazy stuff.
Okay, let's just start out with a couple definitions if y'all don't know anything about money. we can kind of look at this in level 1, level 2, and level 3. What we all kind of know as level 1 standard money, when you think of money, is commodity currency. So that's going to be money whose values comes from a commodity of which it is made. Commodity money consists of objects having value or use in themselves, intrinsic value, as well as their value in buying goods. So when you think commodity money, usually we're thinking gold or silver. And the reason it's commodity is because it still has a value. Even if it's not used as money, it can still be used to make whatever, jewelry or all sorts of other stuff.
Right.
Conductors.
It still has an inherent value other than being a medium of exchange. And so with commodity currency, the way it's been, at least in the beginning of the United States up until about 1913, it was $1, like one banknote was worth about, what was it, 20, or is 1/20th of an ounce of gold or whatever. So a $20 bill, you go into the bank and you say, I want to exchange my dollar bill, my banknote, I want to exchange that for gold. Yeah. And they are obligated to give you a gold coin, which is worth like $20 or so. So that's traditional Scrooge McDuck money. Right. Now everybody likes a commodity currency. Everybody likes paper money because then you don't have to have a fucking Skyrim bag of gold that you're walking around with, right? Looking like straight up Scrooge. And then so that's what we used to have, but now we've moved to fiat currency. And it's not. I'm not talking about the little Italian car.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
they
talking
are
about,
adorable, though.
Yeah,
in a weird way, kind of.
They're kind of cool.
You can use fiat to buy a fiat.
You can steal one. Yeah, you can. You can steal a fiat.
So meta.
By hand.
You could get it for free, technically.
You ever see those videos of people? It was like just 4 bodybuilders just lift a smart car out and steal it. No, but fiat currency is a type of currency that's not backed by a commodity such as gold or silver. It is typically designated by the issuing government to be legal tender. Throughout history, fiat money was quite rare until the 20th century, but there were some situations where banks or governments stopped honoring redeemability of demand notes or credit notes, usually temporarily. In modern times, fiat money is generally authorized by government regulation. So I guess
that's just trust us. We're good for it, bro. Like,
right.
It's good. Trust us.
Which, we all know how that goes,
not
right?
backed by anything, technically.
It's not really backed by anything other than
your trust.
Backed by the military. And if you don't use our money, well, we'll save that. Yeah, we'll save that for what's to come. If you don't want to use the fiat currency,
the promissory note, I think isn't that like the technical term? Yeah,
right. Because now, I mean, it used to be that banks used to have. I mean, that's what the Federal Reserve was for. Was where all the gold is, or what's it called? What's it called? Fort Knox or whatever.
Yeah, right.
And all these places where like physical gold was stored. But after a while, the restrictions started getting less and less, so that the government can print money all willy-nilly and do all, fund illegal wars and all sorts of social programs and pet projects and stuff that they would never be able to do if they had to actually have the gold to back it up.
Right.
Because that is the thing. There's a physical limit to the amount of gold in the world.
Well, it's really a genius move if you think about it. They're like, cool, we're no longer on the gold standard, and then we're just going to like steal all the gold back, and then now we have all that value again. But we'll get into that.
Yeah.
And then so basically most countries now have fiat currency of some type. That's what we've all basically only experienced that. Even though we don't think of it that way, when you go to the bank, they only have maybe 10% of the actual, like they don't have any gold in most of these banks. Smaller banks, they don't have any gold or silver at all.
Yeah.
They just have bills, but they don't even have enough bills for everybody's, if everybody all pulled out their money out of the bank all at one time. They're only legally they only have to have like 10% or something extremely low based on what it is.
That's why you
like
see those Arma trucks going in and out every week.
Yeah.
And then, army bodyguards, all that.
You're only federally insured for up to, I think, $250,000, which seems like a lot. But I mean, if you have $1 million and then 3/4 of it is suddenly gone,
yeah,
that's not fun.
It's crazy.
Good.
Okay. So then what we're moving towards now is central bank digital currencies, which are sort of like a cryptocurrency, but without any of the cool things about cryptocurrency and all of the bad stuff about fiat currency. So a central bank digital currency is also called digital fiat currency or digital based money, is a digital currency issued by a central bank rather than by a commercial bank. It's also a liability of the central bank and denominated in the sovereign currency, as is the case with physical banknotes and coins. Rather than a new currency, a CBDC is a form of central bank electronic money that can be used by households and businesses to make payments. A report by the Bank for International Settlements states that although the term central bank digital currency is not well defined, it is envisioned by most to be a new form of central bank money that is different from balances in traditional reserve or settlement accounts.
So just to interject, like you could already digitally send money around, right? So the whole point of this for them is just to consolidate all of that and onto one singular platform they have control over, right?
Well, this is also, to me, it seems like we're going to get into a precedent of the government seizing money. And it seems like if they move to a centralized digital currency, they can continue to produce money without having to physically produce it and have it be a tangible object, because it's harder to take money away when it's a physical thing. You know, if my dad's like, hey, here's $20, like they're gonna have to come physically take it from me.
Right.
But if it's all on a centralized digital currency, it could just be like, boop, you're done.
Something like that. Yeah.
Beep, beep, beep. Yeah. And that gets really scary, and it gets really into conspiracy zone, and we'll try not to be too doomer about it, but it's also like, it's pretty doomy.
It's a little doomy.
It's a little doomy.
I don't know. You give people an inch, right? Like,
Yeah, no, exactly. It's exactly what, they're like, at first it's like, oh, okay, well, we don't need to have as much gold in the bank as we don't need to have 1-to-1 the amount of gold versus the amount of dollars.
Right.
And then it's like, well, actually, we don't even need to have 10% of the amount of dollars. And then it's like, well, actually, we could just print it from wherever. And then actually, well, we don't even have to print it anymore because now it's just on an app that you can, I'm sure, be banned from, right? It's the very dystopian future that we're heading to.
Yeah, it's particularly concerning, I think, especially the level of security, which I don't actually have any information on. So that's kind of concerning that it hasn't been, more publicized. But anyway, I think that's a discussion for later.
Right.
And then, so just to get this last definition here, we got cryptocurrency. If you don't already know, a cryptocurrency is a digital currency designed to work as a medium of exchange through a computer network that's not reliant on any central authority. That's the big
ultimate takeaway.
That's the ultimate takeaway, is that it's not reliant on central authority, such as government or a bank, to uphold or maintain it. It's a decentralized system for verifying that the parties to a transaction have the money they claim to have, eliminating the need for traditional intermediaries such as banks when funds are being transferred between two entities. So you can see why cryptocurrency represents a threat to the traditional central banking system.
Yeah. So it's interesting because CBDCs now are being touted in some places as being a cryptocurrency when in fact they are not. So the distinction is very important that we make very early on.
Right. So,
yeah, because what is crypto exchanged through? There's like Ethereum. Like, is that Ethereum is just a type of thing? What's it actually exchanged? Like, what's the rate compared to when it comes to like cryptocurrency? Do you guys know?
Well, so the exchange platforms vary, but essentially Bitcoin relies on the Bitcoin blockchain network, and then Ethereum is like a platform essentially for you to create more blockchains on so that you can customize your own financial platform, basically. Right. Okay. So that's the difference there. But they're all still decentralized. So the point of cryptocurrency is that no single entity has ultimate control because everybody gets to be part of the vetting process on transactional happenings, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is why a lot of the finance nerds and like the very libertarian free market types are all about cryptocurrency. And it makes sense because it is more, in a way, you might think, oh, cryptocurrency, it's not even real. Like there's no dollar bills involved or there's no physical money to it. But just due to the way that crypto mining works, it is kind of it's sort of a simulation, I guess, of gold. It's more similar to gold than it is to fiat currency.
Right. In a sense, it has... well, with Bitcoin in particular, I should say there is limited, amount. So the idea with Bitcoin is that each Bitcoin is increasingly difficult to create, to produce. So the overall time frame gets exponentially longer. So it's going to take something like the next 120 years to mine all the Bitcoin, which I do believe the ultimate capacity is 21 million Bitcoin. So yeah, finite in the same way that gold is just non-accessible, or beyond
it's like
the limitations of Earth.
In like back thousands of years ago, I'm sure it was probably a lot easier to mine gold because it hadn't all been stripped from every cave and every tunnel and every river or whatever. You know, even a couple hundred years ago, the actual gold rush, you know, you could just be like, yeah, and you know, you found a little nugget that changes your life in the 1850s or whatever. And then even since then, it's become so much more scarce and hard to find. And it's like, yeah, you could keep looking, but it's just going to get more and more difficult. It's deeper and deeper into the earth. It's harder and harder to actually mine it. So it's sort of like,
hey, people still do look for gold. There's still panners out there.
Oh, there are,
right?
yeah.
Just like as a tangent, there's a YouTube channel out there of a dude who just pans for shit and posts his findings. Anyway,
but I mean, the large scale gold operations are definitely like almost monopolized at this point, which I imagine towards the latter years of cryptocurrency that will also kind of be the case. That's just kind of how it works.
We're living in an age of digital prospectors. Isn't that that's interesting? That's a cyberpunk term, really, you know?
Except now that there's a higher monetary threshold to become a miner.
The funny thing is you said, you know, it's like, well, people will argue like, oh, well, what even is cryptocurrency? Like, it's not even real. But then when you learn about fiat money, you realize that's not even real.
Exactly.
It's just like,
it's source. Trust me, bro.
It's a social construct. It really is. But it went from, you know, to a degree, it's like this amount of gold equals this amount of currency. It was an A to B. And then over time, like you mentioned, it's like they got less and less and less to where it's almost now like almost non-existent. It's not backed by
It's a
gold
complete
at all.
abstraction.
It's completely just based off of our system of trust going, we consider this valuable, and as long as we continue to consider it valuable, that's the case. But yeah, cryptocurrency is a libertarian's dream because it's just simply people that are all banding together and just saying, hey, we're just going to consider this thing valuable, trade amongst ourselves, and then more and more and more people join it, and then
is crypto I mean, it's in the name, but is it encrypted? Like is it hard to get into and see who's doing what transactions with who? That's kind of the point,
Let's just say, short of owning a quantum computer, it would take you thousands of years to crack a single node of encryption on a blockchain. And by the way, when you create a blockchain, every node of encryption encapsulates the previous node. So you're creating more and more tiers of security for every single piece of information that expands.
That's where the
throughout
term
the
comes from.
It's like on Family Guy when he's like, oh, Lois isn't home. And so he goes and there's like the vault in the vault in the vault in the vault in the vault. Goes down the ladder into the vault and it's just like one porno mag. And he's like, nice.
No, exactly. Yes. Well, that is kind of what it's like. And thank you for describing it for the likes of our audience.
Now I get it more.
Now I get it more.
Makes so much sense.
But so basically this whole nightmare train all kind of started with good old Woodrow Wilson in 1913. We should do a whole episode on Woodrow Wilson one day.
How's Woodrow Wilson gonna have two dick references in one name, bro? Come on, bro.
That's true.
How you gonna do that, bro? Woodrow Wilson.
Before we dive into the board, though, I just want to give a quick shout out to our chats. We got a couple of people viewing us right now. Thanks for tuning in.
Oh, yay. We got Malibu Barbie.
Hey,
shouts
up,
out.
yo?
Coco.
What's going on?
Sonay, man. What's good, yo? I know. See,
crypto.
I hope you're getting a little bit more understanding of it. You know, with my analogy, my Family Guy analogy. And yeah, Ritual, you're right. Thank you for, I'm glad you enjoyed that parallel there. He said, I finally understand crypto. You like, thanks.
The zoo definition.
Yeah.
See, we told you. We got you guys.
Dude, we're smart boys. We're gigabrains.
Yeah.
We got it. Galaxy braining it up.
Yeah, big time. So she said, I'm learning. Thanks, Eli. You're welcome, Sonay. Thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate you.
And okay, so
I was gonna say, really, the Woodrow Wilson. I think he was smoking backwoods. You feel me, Woodrow? You know, like
Wood and Dro just in one word.
He was not that cool. He was not that based.
Stop trying to romanticize him.
I wish.
All right, so it's either he smoked
Smoking that reefer.
Either he smoked blunts or he was hung. All right, guys. I don't know exactly, but I think one of those things had to be happening.
Both?
Yeah. All right. Anyways.
Well, Woodrow Wilson, I mean, he basically founded the Federal Reserve, and he also started the income tax being a thing. Yeah.
Boo.
And then I'm pretty sure it was right around the end of his presidency when World War I started.
This guy fucking sucks.
Yeah,
fuck
it
that guy.
got us all involved in
this
World
guy.
War I. And so
3 strikes.
Yeah, that's fucked
2
up.
dicks.
right.
So
So when we get into the history of it, the Federal Reserve, it's one of those things where it sounds like it's a government body, but it's actually not. It's just a bunch of banks all getting together and kind of just determining what the interest rates are and determining how much money is printed. It's like a government entity in the same way that you think FedEx is a government entity, but it's not. It's just a company. Like it just says Fed on it, but it's not anything. It's it's just.
It felt like back in the day, like in the 20s and 30s, they like got those like general or like federal or like United States.
Call
blank
the general,
company.
save
yeah,
some time.
right. The
Yeah.
General Motor Company or the
Yeah.
the United States Federal Steel. The U.S. Steel.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah. It's just like
lock that shit in early,
yeah,
bro. Patent it, bro.
exactly.
Yeah.
They're like, oh well,
So it's kind of
this is the main source.
It's very interesting to me because they made the Federal Reserve in order to stop what we were just talking about, where everybody would go to the bank and say, give me my money right now. I need it. I heard you guys are having troubles. Give me my money now. And a lot of these banks would be forced to close. They wouldn't have enough capital to back it up. And so they tried to control the amount of money that was in the market at all with the Federal Reserve, which is kind of wild because then they gave 12 banks. I forgot where they were. We had it earlier in there, but they were.
My balls are telling me J.P. Morgan Chase is right at the top of that
Probably.
list.
Yeah, they're definitely up there in terms of making people's balls tingle. But but
Which
these,
I'm a Chase customer, by the way.
Chasing that bag.
Yeah.
I picked Golden one because they had like a little dog for the mascot. So.
That sold me.
Golden Retriever.
Oh my god.
So I mean, I don't know what else we have to say about the Federal Reserve. I mean, it's become kind of a
private company,
it's
which is nuts.
it's kind of crazy. It's an unelected bunch of bureaucrats that aren't even really there. You don't vote for them. They don't get elected. It's not even the government. It's just a bunch of bank people.
It's like if
Kinda running your shit.
McDonald's just had all the gold or all the money. Like it is not a. It says federal, but it is not. It is not a government entity, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Right.
It's certainly huge ties with the government, and
That's crazy how much of
Mailed out and all that
how
stuff.
big of a misconception that truly creates, honestly.
Right.
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 So, but even back then, in the 20s and in the early 30s, you could still have gold. But I didn't even know this until kind of recently. We get to 1933 here. We get Executive Order 6102.
This is crazy, by the way. I
This is
actually
crazy.
didn't know this. Yeah,
So we get to FDR, right?
Great.
This executive order basically forbids the hoarding of gold, requiring Americans to turn over the majority of gold holding in exchange for cash in order to increase the national money supply.
Yeah.
And so 2,265 metric tons of gold confiscated from the U.S. public, totaling 27% of all minted gold currency. So you got to have some balls to do that.
Bro, that's almost the equivalent of like during COVID us printing 50% of all currency in 1 year. I mean, it's like half,
Yeah,
but like
we'll get to that.
That's a lot of currency. Like that's a big percentage.
What's wild to me about this right here is it straight up says, go back up to the full screen just for a second. It says within 1 year, it devalued the currency, the conversion rate from $20 an ounce to $35 an ounce. So at first, here, go back to full screen. At first, when they said, hey, come give us your gold, we'll give you cash. It was $20 would get you 1 ounce of gold. And in less than a year, it almost doubled in, that's almost $40 to get the same amount of money. So the value of the money almost got cut in half.
It's like 175% increase if I'm doing the math
Right.
right.
That's
And this was
nuts.
this was during the Great Depression.
during the Great Depression too. That's insane. How that's the dangers of like a centralization of the money and being able to control the exchange rate. That's nuts. You know.
So I think I missed that. So you're saying they took the gold and then they made it less money, or they made it more money? They made
It
it
cost
worth more.
more dollars to get the same amount of gold.
because they confiscated a
Well, that
huge
makes
chunk of
sense.
this like circulation.
Which
right?
you could, I mean, to play devil's advocate, you can argue that because it was now more rare because the government now has 30% of it, it's like now it's just simply worth more as a citizen to have it. But
It's
obviously
worth more,
those,
but your dollar
those
in
who
exchange is
were
worth
compensated.
less.
Yeah,
Right.
right, exactly. Yeah.
That's the part that's crazy to
right,
me.
because it's the gold back, right? Your dollar is now affected.
Yeah.
And it's also crazy that 27%, it seems like that's not that much, but that's still a quarter of all the money that was minted and put out there
Right.
that they were able to seize back.
Right.
I wonder how
and
they
by
did
the way,
that.
they're not just like going around being like, "Give me your gold necklaces." Like these were like minted gold coins,
gold
right?
coins,
Right.
gold
Yep.
bars.
Yep.
One of the only things that was allowed to stay was gold jewelry. That's why you'll
Right.
see a lot of stuff. It's like, oh, this is my grandma's. It's 300 years old. It's like that was allowed to.
Damn, your
stay.
grandma's old as fuck, dude.
Damn.
Hey man, what can I say?
grandma's grandma's grandma.
That native blood, you know.
The greatest grandma.
The greatest.
She was the best.
Well, that's crazy. And I mean, just when you think about that, and this was in the 30s that they did this, where it's like probably your average American was packing too. Like they had the balls to go. I mean, I don't know, like I didn't look super deep into the actual details of how they managed to do this, but it's like if you think the government won't come door to door and start taking shit from you, it's like this is exactly what the fuck they did.
I mean, particularly in America too, it seems like a tough sell, but it's like again, you just have to convince people that it's in their best interest, more or less. you know?
Again,
It's-
this almost comes to like the desperation element where it's the Great Depression. People are very desperate. They're looking for work. They don't know what to do. Some people might have some gold jewelry or some gold lying around. They're like, I don't care. I need something. And so they go turn it in. And then that short-term investment just fucks you over even further.
Right.
Yeah, they over incentivize literally
The perfect
just
time to do it.
selling yourself short, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I almost feel like we are not in a similar situation, but things have definitely become a lot more intense in regard to how desperate people are getting because the economy is really bad on a global scale and it's making the day-to-day life for people even harder.
Yeah, yeah.
So hopefully it doesn't come to some situation like this where they're like, we'll give you more money for your cash. Like,
no, it will. We really could run into a situation like that where it's like, take all, you know, back in the day, people in the 20s and 30s, there were people that just lied to the government and had a bunch of gold coins or whatever, and then put them in a coffee can and dug them,
Buried them in
buried 'em in
the
their backyard.
Right, yeah.
And some people got away with it. I mean, it's not even a good, but you can kind of do that now with cash. You can put a bunch of cash in a mattress, even though you're going to lose value on it every single year because of inflation. But there could come a day where they come for all the cash and they say, don't worry, we're going to reimburse you for that cash with our new Fed Now currency. And they're going to try to
We'll give you even
sell it.
more.
They're right. Or they'll literally give you an incentive. And then they might even do things with
Give you 10% on it.
with this Fed Now currency, right? They'll give you more, or you save. You get cash back on your whatever.
And how is that not just causing more and more inflation?
Oh yeah, no, it will. And you know, it's basically turning money into vouchers. That's the other really dangerous thing about the government cryptos or whatever you want to call them.
the
These
honorary
CBDCs.
system. Yeah.
Digital currencies.
And these are not CBD currencies that we're talking about. Like, they're not chill. It's
Not
not
at
Delta 8.
it won't help you sleep. It's
Certainly
It will
not,
not.
THC
Yeah.
currency either.
gonna blow your back out instead, you know?
And so this is gonna come to you. I mean, we've already gotten suckered by the stimmy checks or whatever. You know, we all took the stimmy checks, and then, you know, we got crumbs while all these giant corporations got huge bailouts. What else is new?
Right.
And then, you know, and then you go to file your taxes the next year, and it's like, hey, because you got all of these stimmy checks, actually, we're going to tax you more because that counts as more income too. And it's like, you fuckers. And
I really want to know how many people have been screwed on their taxes ever since 2020 and 2021.
A lot.
Because
Yeah.
I feel like it has just thrown such a wrench in the gears for most people, because most people our normies got a W-2. and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, you have this big payout that you didn't intend to get. A lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
And then now you have to sign up for other programs just to get relief from the relief check.
Yeah. Right.
And it's then they get you in a loop because now you're being taxed because you got a government benefit and you're in this different category now.
Right.
See, that's the thing, is they will outsmart you at their own game every fucking time and just
Yeah.
keep you circulating in their system, man.
And the way that they're going to try and sell this Fed Now currency to you is going to be like, it's like everything you like about Venmo and Cash App, but better. You just deal directly with the Fed. There's no more middleman. There's no more intermediary.
Yeah.
Well, and guess what just happened to the Cash App founder?
Dude, that's
Yeah.
a crazy saga, bro. How he got unalived in the middle of San Francisco.
Got stabbed.
And apparently he was going to Eyes Wide Shut parties with the sister of the person who stabbed him. Did you hear about that?
Oh my
I
God.
did hear about that
Yeah.
too.
Inside job?
Potentially.
Dude. Yeah.
Potentially. I don't know.
Get,
That's
get
crazy.
close to the target type of deal, you know?
But right, it's like,
Yeah.
but essentially, that's how you can kind of imagine sort of how it'll be like. It'll be like everything's on Venmo, but right now Venmo, when someone sends you money on Venmo, they're not actually sending you the money. They're basically sending the bank an IOU, and then like all these little transactions are happening. That's why they charge a fee too, because it's whatever. There's some processing power that has to go on to
If you want it instant, usually,
Right.
they'll charge you 90, percentage of 1% or whatever.
right,
Yeah.
because
But
these banks are still based on very old technology.
I just want to say too, this is clearly the start of where like I'm trying to work on that. This is the start of where the financial oligarchy really started to swing dick in America, I feel like, because JP Morgan probably didn't have to hand over their gold. Andrew Carnegie probably didn't have to hand over his gold.
Yeah, you got a
JD
point.
Rockefeller didn't have to hand over his gold probably.
No point.
Yeah, crazy stuff.
That's a really big instance of something so wide sweeping that I think is just has no precedent, really.
Yeah, no, that's the
mass
scare.
confiscation of currency in the United States. Like,
I didn't even-
especially in the United States.
I didn't even learn about this in college, and I'm an American history is part of my major.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's wild, man.
Well,
But here we are,
they don't
delivering
want
it
you
to you
know
on
about it.
YouTube.
real source.
The Zudes.
And another thing about this too is, when we were talking about gold and we were talking about panhandling, well, it's like, what about the modern day panhandling? Like, actually, people just on the streets just begging for cash. Well, it almost makes me think: is this move towards entirely digital currencies basically a way to just totally screw over anyone that's desperate for cash? You go
Shoot.
anywhere where there's homeless people and they're like, please, do you have any change? And it's most people genuinely don't, because everything's digital. It's all on a debit card, and then they might be like, well, I got a Venmo, whatever. But
So yeah, that's
There's-
like strike one for the social credit score system
Yeah.
right there.
right,
So,
like you're not going to be able to do panhandling or get cash tips. I mean, for me as a musician, cash tips, that's a big part of it,
They
Or-
also want to be able to keep track of every single transaction that's happening so they can tax it.
right.
So
there's
if
no
I'm-
coincidence that the IRS just hired like a
Oh, they hired a ton of
hundreds of
people,
thousands of
and
people
they
or something?
they
They
said
hired
that
87,000 new agents.
87,000.
and they said you had to be willing to use unaliving force. And it's like,
Yeah.
bruh,
yeah,
chill.
that's insane.
IRS with guns. Yeah.
Because again, it's like
Didn't they also
members.
make a massive ammunition purchase recently?
I believe
Because
so.
Their agents are getting armed up. Yep.
I believe so. Scary stuff.
Yep.
Because I just want to sell T-shirts, and I'll sell them for the low if the government isn't gonna get in the middle. You feel me?
Yeah, 100%.
They will. Okay, so getting back to the history lesson, right? So we got 1933 is when basically it's illegal to have gold, which is nuts.
Yeah.
And then moving on from that, you get 1944 is when the IMF was founded. So that's the International Monetary Fund, right?
Yeah. That was a big boy right there.
And that was found at the Bretton Woods Conference. Bretton Woods is like a little town in like Vermont or Connecticut or one of these fucking
On the
towns.
East
Yeah,
Coast,
it's on the East
yeah.
Coast. Yeah, it's the same thing as the Federal Reserve. It's like they call it the creature from Jekyll Island because that's where it's like all these weird billionaires went to Jekyll Island and then came up with this new idea. And so this is kind of a similar thing.
And this is right before the end of World War II, so everybody's very desperate to try to figure out what needs to be done after this horrible, horrible atrocity just happened around the world. and America is the last one standing in the room, essentially. Like,
the only one that wasn't really invaded
yeah.
besides Pearl Harbor, but
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an attack, but that wasn't an invasion.
Well, don't forget about the Battle of Los Angeles, bro.
That's a whole thing. We got to do a video about that sometime.
That's crazy.
That's a very Zudy incident.
I still don't know what to make of that.
Okay, so the IMF was founded at the Bretton Woods Conference. So the IMF promotes stability of exchange rates, monitors financial flow, and enforces economic policy. They make money from from contributions to IDA loan activities, subscription fees, and market investments. All right, what the hell does that mean?
So in order to get the financial security that's being promised by the IMF, you have to pay fees to it's like insurance, you know. So
it's like being part of a country club.
Yeah, exactly. And so if something goes wrong, they're also supposed to tell you, okay, here's what you're gonna do to fix it, and we're gonna be on your ass to make sure you're fixing it. Obviously that doesn't happen all the time. Look at someone say like Greece, where they've had tons and tons of economic problems and crashes, and they keep on getting bailed out. And I was reading about it. A big problem with the IMF is that there's just differences culturally in what they think they should do with the help they receive. And so they don't always do a 1-for-1 with what the IMF tells them to do. And then the IMF also doesn't enforce necessarily sometimes what they told them to do. They're just like, well, yeah, the money's gone.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, clearly they don't. I mean, the IMF doesn't have literal guns, I guess, right? Or do I mean, maybe they do.
They can send people to do things, yeah.
Right? Because
Yeah,
they
I'm
must
pretty
have
sure.
some kind of influence because there's 190 member countries and there's 195 countries on Earth.
Yeah.
Or there's 100. Well, it depends on who you ask, you know. So basically, every single, at least by now, by today in 2023, there's 190 member countries. So they must have been either willingly or not so willingly joined the IMF.
Well, a lot of the point of joining the IMF is to get loans, get for infrastructure and for just stuff to make the country run, to borrow money from them. But then the conditions in order to get those loans are usually pretty harsh, and they make you the bitch, they make you the IMF's bitch, you know?
They also have like a emergency like disaster recovery fund, stuff like that. So with COVID-19 in particular, they have like a whole part of their website that's just dedicated to like monitoring, you know, vaccinations and the recovery process.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
It's crazy stuff. So their main exchange rate that they would loan money out and give loans out in is US dollars, because again, this is after World War II. It's the strongest currency. We had the strongest economy, and everybody needed our help. So we were very eager to loan out tons of money to everybody, and it's been that way for a long time. It does say they exchange in Chinese yuan, Japanese yen, British pound, also very strong economies at the time. But again, 2021 COVID, the amount of printing money massively devalued how much the world is worth now, because if the world's trading in US dollars and it's worth significantly less now, everybody's on broker for it, you know?
And we didn't get the exact number, but basically in 2021, when they started printing all this money post COVID, the US government printed something around 25% of the bills that have ever been printed since the inception of like
the country,
whatever the
Federal Reserve.
It's sometime Federal Reserve notes, which have been around. Right. I mean, these federal notes have been around since. There's different iterations of them, but somewhere in the 1800s is where it kind of became more standardized.
Right.
So in the entire country's history, in 2021, we printed 25% more than has ever existed for over like close to like 200 years, which is crazy how much we've just devalued the currency, and we're not seeing the effects of it now, but we will. And but that's the genius of that's the evil genius of
That's
having
why
it.
they're very much so trying to push for the switch to be like, okay, everybody, let's get on the digital form now.
Right.
Because see, now it's all just beep boop beep boop beep. It's all like on the computer now.
abstract.
Don't worry about it. We're good.
Right.
Versus like again, they don't want a situation where it's embarrassing enough to have bricks of money stacked up. Like Germany after World War One.
Yeah, you've seen the
iconically,
pictures,
there's
I'm
the
sure, in
photos,
school, yeah.
where it's like wheelbarrows full of money and kids playing with stacks of money.
Yeah,
'cause there was
building
just
like
so much.
castles and shit. Yeah,
Right.
out of the
And
bricks.
there's a whole thing after World War One too, where the Weimar Republic was intentionally trying to crash the economy like over and over again to prove like, hey, we can't pay back the reparations for World War One, so look we're fucked up, we can't do it. And so they intentionally crashed the market over and over again. And you can't help but feel that sometimes it feels nefarious that politicians are making decisions that are going to hurt everybody in order to get something out of it in a long-term
Right.
situation, which I don't know what the 40 chefs moves are, but it definitely does feel that way sometimes.
Right. Well, and it's if you want to think about, gosh, how could all these Germans in the Weimar Republic get so radicalized and go along with something so evil and atrocious in World War II? It's like, well, you start by just making all of their money fucking worthless to where they're just having wheelbarrows full of it and it's all worth nothing, other than to wipe their ass with.
Yeah.
Like that's
Literally.
that's
Literally.
Yeah.
And then this all or a kind of a similar thing happened in Zimbabwe too.
Oh yeah.
Like a couple decades ago, they're like, well, let's just print more money. We're so broke, let's just print more money. They tried it. Like they really went and tried it, and they tried it all the way until I think they were getting to they started printing bills that were $1 million, not dollar, but whatever the term for their currency. They were like $1 million notes, $1 billion notes. I think I don't know if it went to $1 trillion, but there was a lot of zeros on the end of it, and it's like that's what we're getting towards. Where it's crazy.
What is also crazy, just kind of jumping into the something similar to the Executive Order 6102, is how in India they go from like the cash rupee system to like all digital, or was it all
digital in 2016? It was an overnight change. Yeah.
Which is crazy because again, that economy is primarily functioned with cash.
Yeah.
And it's wild.
Yeah, I do believe they suffered major economic consequences for that for quite a while. Because you can't just do that overnight. Your implementation plan needs to be more than just flip the fucking switch, dog.
Yeah, that's something that needs to take years of stimulation and putting it into practice before you go ahead and do something that big, which I think would happen with the Fed now sort of thing. If
That
they
is kind of
wanted,
how it's doing. It's slowly rolling it out.
right.
And a lot of the COVID stuff was a sort of a test bed for this, what people are willing to take, how many checkpoints they're willing to go through just to do normal things and interact in their daily lives. Are they willing to have to show proof of whatever to go see a show or to go to the grocery store?
It made people far more used to the idea of being at the government's beck and call to be allowed or disallowed from doing things.
I have to go watch the morning news today to determine if I'm allowed to go to the park today and walk my dog or whatever,
Yeah.
We're
It's like
willing
now
to do a
everybody's
lot.
checking the patch notes for the Fed Now system.
Right.
Like,
I know you have to read the terms and conditions, bro.
yeah.
To go.
And then, so, like I said, 190 member countries out of 195. And so the only ones that aren't members of the IMF would be North Korea, which didn't even exist yet when the IMF was founded in 44. North Korea was basically, like
Just
the 50s?
Korea,
it was just Korea at that point.
Yeah, Korean War was in the 50s.
So South Korea got along with the IMF. North Korea doesn't get along with
Anybody.
anything. So they're like the one outlier. Like, that's funny because we're like, oh, who wouldn't be in it? And then I was like, probably North Korea.
Lo and behold.
And then you got Liechtenstein, which is, I think, it's like near Germany or in Germany. It's like a tiny little, I don't know. It's like one of these, it's like it's a little like city state kind of thing. Same thing.
Like, leave us the hell alone.
Same thing with Monaco.
Don't they got a whole gambling thing going on down there in Monaco? Isn't that whole their shtick?
Yeah.
It's like the Vegas of Central America.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like a reservation. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you got Palestine, Palestine, not Palestine, Ohio, Palestine, the country,
yeah.
which is or isn't a country depending on who you ask.
That's a whole can of worms.
And then Vatican City, which, that's a whole other can of worms. Right? You know what I'm saying?
Vatican City.
So then if we jump ahead here to 1971, this is where good old Richard Nixon completely abandons the gold standard, right?
Yeah.
I am not a crook.
Yeah. So we got, three of the shining examples of great presidents here. You know, people still look fondly at FDR. No, it's funny. We were talking about FDR earlier, and you're like, he's the longest standing president. And I was like, was he though?
They see me rolling. They hate it.
Don't be ableist. FDR was a great president.
FDR fucks.
Elaborate. Proof is in the pudding.
I think
I don't know.
I think he doesn't need to.
Too bad we can't find any of that pudding.
Yeah.
Damn.
Shoot.
Vladimir Puddin.
All right. So Nixon.
So Nixon.
Nixon's got a fixin'.
Yeah. So, okay. So sort of leading up to 1971 is when this whole Bretton Woods agreement sort of falls apart. It was gradually falling apart, but it really fell apart in 1971 officially because sort of when we were dealing with, when there was like West Germany and, you know,
The Soviets
and all this stuff.
After World War II, U.S. and USSR determined Germany was too important to give to either one, so they broke the thing in half. But Berlin was too important to give to the USSR, so the United Nations said Berlin is technically still in ours, even though it's dead in the middle of USSR territory.
So at that point, West Germany they stopped relying on the U.S. banks, and they were just going back to the Deutschmark.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they started dropping out of this whole Bretton Woods agreement because I think there was like 44 countries or something like that were all part of the Bretton Woods agreement, and they were doing all their banking with America on the basis that America had all their gold in a stockpile somewhere. And then come, the 50s and the 60s, some of these countries, France and Germany or West Germany and some of these other European countries, they start asking for their money back. Basically, they're like, I just want my gold back. Can we just not do this anymore? And they're like, we don't got it. Dude. We fucking spent it all.
Funny
They're like
story.
about that. They're like, actually, we spent it all on Vietnam and also the Great Society.
All the highways and stuff,
Yeah.
Yeah. Infrastructure.
So the dollar was
They spent it on man-made horrors beyond everybody's comprehension.
right. See, that's the thing. Once basically the whole premise of getting away from the gold standard is so that they'll be able to fund illegal wars, which that's all they've done since World War II. Some people would say like World War II is kind of the last quote unquote justified war, and that was the last war, at least in U.S. history, that was constitutionally
every other war since has been a police action,
Right.
an executive police action.
Yeah.
So Congress hasn't formally agreed to war since World War II, I believe.
That's craziness.
And so when you could just print more money, you have a lot more free reign to just kind of do whatever the hell you want with these police actions, quote unquote.
That's also partially the UN's fault because they had the isolationism, or not isolation, containment was the policy. So they said, no matter what, no matter how much money it takes, we will throw money at the problem until communism's gone.
Right.
And
Oh my God.
look what that does to the world's economy.
Right. Well, that was like kind of the classic neocon. Like that was sort of the birth of that, where it's like, we have to defeat this giant enemy monster of communism. So to do that, we basically have to also become a monster ourselves and do all this shady shit
We need
that
unlimited money.
Yeah, right. We need unlimited money so that we can fight their weird unlimited money. It's like
no.
you got to fight fire with fire. And it's like, was it worth it? I don't know. Maybe.
No, it wasn't.
Maybe it's
no,
like,
probably
right?
not.
Because, I mean,
Well, actually, yeah.
it depends on who you ask. I mean, did they really think that communism was going to take over the entire world? Or did they know that it maybe would have just kind of fizzled out on its own because it's just so inherently flawed. It depends on who you ask.
I think they definitely created a boogeyman for the public. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
The red.
Right.
It's literally the Red Scare, right?
Right.
You're right. So,
Right.
It's. I think it had part. I think it was a boogeyman for the public. It's an excuse to protect their financial interests.
Yeah.
But I think also there was a genuine fear of what would happen to what they have and what would happen to people, because there was a lot of bad things that went on in communist countries.
absolutely.
And those were horror stories, that would get told and spread around, and they absolutely did not want that. The average person, I feel like, didn't want that for sure, so it was a valid thing, a valid fear. It wasn't like not a nothing fear, but
yeah.
it got inflated for sure.
yeah, I
Legitimate
think the
concern for sure.
overinflation of that, because I mean, it's like it clearly happened in countries, but I don't think it could necessarily take hold like that in the United States.
Right. There's
it's like-
instances too where it's like, okay, dude just wants to nationalize a natural resource and use it so that he doesn't have to be a slave to the IMF.
Right.
And that's communism. We gotta take him out, type
Right,
shit.
right,
like that'll happen. That happened tons of times.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's not saying that communism was good. It's just that you could just use that as a boogeyman to kind of declare anything bad and then just wipe them out.
It was a vehicle, yeah.
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 So
Crazy stuff.
Yeah.
It's a lot of
Opportunistic.
All of these governments are pretty evil at the end of the day. It's not like there's really a clear-cut good guy, we're not.
Yeah.
I'm not really pro or anti anything at this point. It's just like the more consolidated power that you have, the more opportunity for evil that there is.
Yeah.
And that's what at least I want to be cool about the idea of cryptocurrency, is that I was watching a clip from if you go back and watch Majid Nawaz, his last interview on Joe Rogan like a couple years ago, he was breaking down, this is like where I first heard about crypto-based digital currencies, central bank digital currencies. And he was kind of explaining that crypto is sort of like the printing press, right? Where when the printing press first came out, they were printing the Bible on there, and so that anybody could have access to read the Bible or get any information that they want. It was like the internet of its time.
Right.
And so
in languages they could read as well. That's
Right.
That's a
Yeah.
huge part of it. It was originally in Latin, which was only really taught to extremely wealthy nobles, which were
Right.
of course part of the Vatican and priesthood and all that.
Right.
So
So you'd have to
German
pay all
and
this-
English and
Right.
all this. They
So
were
you'd
the
have to pay
translators.
pay all the money to the church, and they would give you favors or whatever, or basically absolve you of whatever sin
Sure.
if you pay them a bunch of money, which was
Extorted.
a pretty fucked up way of doing
Yeah.
it. That's where Martin Luther came in, and the whole Protestantism, Reformation, all that stuff. Right. So basically,
From the printing press.
right, and cryptocurrency is kind of the same thing, where and decentralization of currency and decentralization of information are extremely powerful, and ultimately will be looked upon like when we look back 100 years from now, it'll be looked at as a really good thing ultimately for humanity.
Right.
Yeah.
In the same way the printing press is looked at as a huge leap forward for humanity.
It's a technology that fundamentally breaks the gatekeeping.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But immediately following the invention of the printing press was the 30 Years' War in Europe, which was like extremely destructive. There's gonna be a rough patch of trying to make this work, because you can tell them they're getting more and more desperate. In the 30s, they were that desperate to get their money in control that they went door to door and started collecting all the gold from people, and now they're getting more and more desperate. And when you put an animal in a corner, it's gonna lash out at you eventually, and that's kind of what we're doing to the government, where it's like, we're poking the bear.
I think we're hitting a similar point to with Nixon getting rid of the gold standard, where a lot of people are saying, a lot of countries too are saying, I don't even want to be involved with the U.S. We got BRICS forming. They want to get a different system going to have people be able to turn to. And just like in the 70s where people are like, okay, I want to back out, give me my gold, I want it now. They're not able to pay up, which again is a problem with financial institutions becoming so monopolized and having total authority over the people below them, because then they can't even hold their end of what they're promising as a service.
All right.
Right. So yeah, things really start to take a dive. So let's see. We get to 1983 here, and this is I'm actually not familiar with this. You were looking at this, Bobby. The cryptocurrencies were first theorized.
Yeah, we actually
94.
we've got a few links on the last few things. I think it's just the IMF website.
Oh, here we
but,
go. Oh, yeah, we
but
got
if
a
we
couple
scroll
things.
up, we have the website of the guy who first theorized and implemented a digital currency, I should say. So he
David Chom.
yeah, he called it like eCash, I think, and now it's like a DigiCash thing, or maybe I got those inverted. But essentially, yeah, this cheese and guy right here is responsible for all the pain and suffering that will ensue over the next several hundreds of thousands of years due to his inventions.
Like, right, okay, so he kind of theorized the original idea of cryptocurrency
right.
before it like really got implemented about, what, 20-something years
Nope,
later?
he was the first implementer, I do believe, the next year. Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yep, so if you scroll
This
back
was
down
in
on
the
the time,
80s, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
this was 83, I do believe, when this happened. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is right when essentially, computing power is getting better and better
Right.
and more accessible to more and more people, to where this would actually be feasible, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah, I mean, okay, so it was what, like 14 kilobytes or something? That was the memory on the original, like, first, like, moon landing, I do believe, in the spaceship. So there's a lot you can do with a very limited amount of bytes. So, yeah, managing finances, he must
made
have...
those bytes stretch, man.
Must have had some gigabrain moments to realize that, like, this is what you could do with it. And yeah, it's just another one of those instances of somebody creating a technology that just got ridiculously out of hand.
Right.
And will continue to get more out of hand as time goes on, it seems.
Right.
Well, it's as most technology, it's kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, I'm not assuming that guy. I don't know the guy, but it's like I'm not assuming he did it with corrupt meaning from the beginning, or even it's like he just happened upon a technology that he thought would just be a great new technology for everyone. And in a way, it kind of is. I mean, it's besides what we're getting at with it becoming a centralized digital currency, which I think is the real problem. It's like we've mentioned before, we're already in a hybrid way doing this with, it's like our whole banking system is pretty much digital,
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
We can transfer funds through our phone into and out of accounts. We use debit cards. We use credit cards. We now have Venmo, Cash App, all of these PayPal platforms that essentially allow you to, utilize it. And it's like those are all really great and convenient things, right? But to your point, it's like it's with most great and convenient things, they're also conveniently turned to evil purposes sometimes.
Yeah. One of the quotes that I often repeat to people is, with any technology created, it has been used for evil, just because it's just a tool, like, at the end of the day. So
It's the same thing with nuclear technology.
Isn't this around the time where the internet first started too? Because there's the World Wide Web was the 90s, but
I want to...
He was gay. Dude, don't slander this man.
I forgot to delete that, actually.
I mean, was he though?
No, I don't know.
Does it matter?
I have no idea.
No, I mean, I don't know.
He could have been, okay.
Maybe
back then
That
it
made him
Yeah.
smart enough to create the currency.
he didn't have to deal with broads, you know what I'm saying? Hey, yo.
Oye, cabrón, we got the tequila crisis.
But,
Oh,
yeah, Eli, you want to take it away?
This is just an example we wanted to touch on. In 1994, apparently the value of the Mexican peso dropped significantly, and it caused a really big global crisis, resulting in a $50 billion IMF bailout.
Ay, caramba.
Ay, caramba. Ay, Dios mío. Both domestic and international economic factors, along with political forces, helped precipitate
Come on, Smart Boy podcast.
Precipitate. There we
Yeah,
go. The
yeah,
crisis. Precursor to the crisis. Oh, it's one of the first international financial crisis ignited by capital flight.
Yeah.
Is capital flight? That's when
so-
people try to grab their shit and bounce, right?
Yeah, so that's a big old economy crasher right there.
Yeah,
Pretty much
exactly.
the classic. Yeah.
The classic, yeah. The
Yeah,
run to the
that
money,
is like
the bank
one.
runs.
Yeah.
That's the same thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
the bank runs in for the Great Depression.
When
yeah.
everyone, I mean, even like we were saying on a global scale, when everyone just goes, "Hey, I actually won all my money back," and everyone does it, they're just like, "Oh, that's not supposed to happen."
Yeah.
Hey, that's a pretty decent run, though, considering it was almost 50 years before the IMF had to actually do their job.
Right.
I know, right?
So
That's not
yeah,
bad.
because it was founded in 1944, and so it wasn't actually used to
So it's
bail
first
out
used on
anyone.
Mexico.
Well, the
Yeah.
IMF is like
Wow.
it's the IMF is the indignant motherfuckers are really like they're a oligarchy, like I was talking about earlier, how it formed in America because not everybody in America had to hand over their gold reserves. After World War II, everybody's like, I need money, bro. Like, I'll give you whatever money I have to get money for infrastructure and sign away whatever conditions I have to get these loans to rebuild my country after it was just blown to shit.
Yeah.
And now this is like, see, there's almost like these weird parallels that keep coming along at like like larger scales because this stuff is just bound to happen with financial consolidation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the thing that makes this particularly interesting is it was one of the first major instances of this happening to a country and causing significant global economic impact. So the IMF obviously is a global contribution, so a $50 billion like loss to them over this was kind of a loss to everybody, really. So,
Yeah.
man.
Crazy stuff.
Why was it called the tequila crisis?
the tequila
Does it have to do
crisis.
with tequila whatsoever?
It's also
I've
called the
had-
Mexican
I mean,
peso crisis.
That's what
Okay,
it really,
that's
yeah,
probably
the
better.
tequila
Yeah.
crisis is.
I mean, that also. I mean, I assume that means you probably can't buy as much tequila.
It's their only export, Christoph.
I've had a tequila crisis or two in
They
my
got
time. I can't
avocados
tell you
too,
that.
bro.
That's true.
Shout
Well,
out
they got
to
the whole party pack.
shout out to Sarah Ellsworth in the chat too.
Hey,
by the
Hey,
way.
what's up, Sarah?
Thanks for tuning in.
Gracias, amigo.
We're glad we're your favorite Zudes.
Hell yeah.
I don't know
Appreciate
any
you.
others, but I'll take it.
Oh, dude, I actually,
No, there's
I
hella Zudes. Actually.
dude, I learned about some other Zudes today, and I was not happy. But we'll
Dude,
talk about
oh,
that another
yeah.
time.
Yeah, we'll save that for
I was
another
not happy about the other Zudes that exist.
No.
It's all bad.
Wow. Hope you're enjoying this Zujumacational
Potential
content.
rebranding coming soon. Just
Never. I'll die on this hill.
Yes.
We are the Zudes, dude.
We are the Zudes.
That
No one will ever take that from us.
was unfortunately well coordinated. Amazing.
So what's the deal with capital flight? That's okay. That's where everybody just takes their money out.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're just
classic.
not ready. The
Happened in
classic.
1800s happened. What created the
1920s,
Great Depression?
yeah.
Yeah.
The 20s, 30s made the Great Depression. Happened, I think, in 1984. 80 was it Black Monday?
Yep, that's a whole thing, too. Yeah,
wasn't
that
that
was-
also a capital flight? I'm assuming.
I don't know enough
I don't
to
know.
be
We
honest
have
about
to check
stocks.
that out. But
about
this
stonks.
happens all the time.
Yeah.
It's the classic,
Dude,
bro.
Yeah.
okay.
So this is the one that set it off.
Have
Set
you
off
guys
the
ever
train.
heard about like I forget what it's called. It's called like the forgotten crash or whatever. And apparently before the Great Depression, there was another crazy market crash in
It's like 1880, right?
Yeah.
or
something
maybe
like
no,
that.
or maybe it was I don't know if it was 1880, but I think there might have been another one even after that that just goes kind of
Under the radar.
under the radar because they basically just did nothing. And then it kind of just sorted itself out.
I actually I do know what you're talking about. I don't know. I
forget
forgot what
what
it's
it's-
called,
yeah.
but
Exactly.
that's why they made the Federal Reserve because again,
Yeah.
banks were very independent before, and if a bank had a crisis that was not under the watch of the federal, the federal government,
You're just
they
fucked.
they didn't know what to do. They couldn't do much about it. They're like, that's not my bank. I don't control that bank. I don't know.
Right.
And so these happened a lot. And I think, again, because they kept happening is why they proposed the Federal Reserve as like this good idea because it's like, okay, we need to really watch. We can't be having, all these, like, we need to know if a crash is coming. We need to be able to fix it and have influence on it if it does happen too.
Of course, correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
Well,
So-
but that's interesting with smaller banks too, because you think about it, banks are just like any other product or service that you buy, and really, the idea is that there should be a ton of different banks that are all competing with each other to have your money. So if you go to a bank and you're kind of skeptical, you're like, I don't know, are you guys going to really have all my money? You know, just with like this whole FTX thing that just went down that whole fiasco because it wasn't FDIC insured. If you go to a bank and you're like, I don't really know if these guys are going to be able to have all my money, maybe you don't give them all your money. Maybe you have it spread out between a few different places, or maybe you really have to look into what that bank's doing and kind of check them out and you know, but that's too much. That's too much effort for most people.
Yeah.
You got to diversify.
Right,
you got to,
right.
but you got to check it out. In the same way that banks have become so standardized, because after that, you're like, well, the FDIC insures me up to $250,000. I'm never going to make that much money in my life, so I'm good. I'll go with whatever the fuck bank. They're all FDIC. It doesn't even matter. It's the same thing as anything else where, you know, before you might have really thought about where you're going to get medical care. But if you're like, well, it's all part of the same, you know, ACA, or it's all part of the same big government thing. Well, I don't really have to think about it. Like it's like kind of true with like, okay, maybe you don't have to think about it so much and it takes some of the burden off of you. But then all these banks and all these, you know, insert company here can just kind of take advantage of you and take advantage of your trust in them and sort of do whatever the hell they want because they know. And same thing with the mortgage crisis and same thing with everything else. They're like, well, the government will bail me out if anything bad happens. Where it just creates a situation where nobody does their research. Nobody looks into what's actually the best for them. They're just trusting like, I'm just going to do everything willy-nilly because it doesn't even matter, which is that's bad.
Right.
Yeah.
By essentially having, to your point, a bank is a financial institution that you should look at as a product, right? Or a service at least, right? Their service is to hold your money, take care of it. You can take it out, right? That's the idea. But when the government essentially just infinitely backs up an entity like that, even if it was any product, really any service, in a way that automatically like destroys all the pros and cons, all the cons and the pros of just like the free market thing. So it's like, you know, to your point, it's like it essentially monopolizes it by default because it's like, okay, like now this bank can never crash, so therefore they can just get away with being a poor service.
Being shitty, yeah.
Yeah, and then all of the banks could then just be a poorer service, and it doesn't matter.
Same thing with Social Security, too, or like any of these other things.
Whereas before, it's like the way the free market and capitalism should work, it's like, again, you know, it's not perfect, but it's kind of a roll of the dice where it's like, you know, hey, if I'm going to go with this bank, I'm assuming they're going to do well, and I want them to do well because I've got literally financial interest in the bank with them, right? But let's say they crash and you're just kind of screwed. It's like, for you in the short term, that's awful, but in the long term, what ends up happening is that bank is now gone, and all of this institution is there, and that leaves room for the other ones to then do a better job or to learn from that mistake or absorb and then be a better service, be a better alternative for the future.
Creative destruction. That's like the whole point of it. Like ideally, best case scenario, that's how free market shit is supposed to work.
Yes.
That's what we want to be striving for. Obviously, that's not what we're getting, but it's what we want to strive
exactly
for.
caused the SVB crash again? It was the whole like FTX thing, right?
Okay. No, that's two different things. Well, the SVB thing, I guess from what I understand, the Silicon Valley Bank basically had all of their money in all these tech startups, whereas most banks have a little bit of money in everything. They got just normies, they got investors, they got companies, they got all these different things. Because banks, you have to diversify what you're spending your money on as a person, but a bank also has to diversify whose money they're taking. Because if all of a sudden Silicon Valley, just the industry takes a huge crash, and your bank, Silicon Valley Bank, only has all the money from all these Silicon Valley companies,
and then a capital flight happens.
Then it's like they're fucked, and then everybody's fucked.
Well, then in this case too, it's like the bank making irresponsible decisions as its own entity. It's investing in faulty investments that it's like, you know, they're all hopped up on booger sugar, and they're like, listen, this is gonna be a great idea.
Yeah, no,
you gotta get in on it early.
They're
like, bro, I
don't
don't
like
like
polycues and cocaine, bro.
Yeah, dude.
With it.
Dangerous combo.
That's the formula for a Silicon Valley company if I've ever heard one.
Yeah, for real. But it's the same thing like with Social Security too. Before Social Security was a thing in the United States, what was Social Security? You're like, well, when I'm old, basically your ticket to having a good life when you're old is to fuck a lot and have a bunch of kids, and then those kids have a bunch of grandkids, so that by the time you're 70 or 80 and you're on your last leg, you got a bunch of minions that can help you. That's the whole
free worker
That's the whole
laborers.
thing, and that's why like I'm not like.
There's a problem with China and Japan like that, or Japan, because a lot of the old people who are homeless it's because they didn't have kids or their kids couldn't end up coming back around to taking care of them, because culturally that's a whole thing. And so it's a lot of like old men, because old women are getting benefits or housing and stuff, like because culturally they're like, you're a man, you need to fend for yourself, you should be able to provide. So a lot of these older cats, they can't take care of themselves, or because it's tough out there, and that's like a majority of what's making up their homeless problem out there.
Yeah, which I mean, their homeless problem ain't shit compared to what we got going on in the U.S. Like, I mean, that is the thing too with immigrants from a lot of places in Asia, like Chinese immigrants in the U.S. That is what they do. They're not relying on Social Security, bro. They'll live in a 3 or 4 generation household sometimes, where it's like they're taking care of grandma, like they're going to work all day and then they're going home to give grandpa a sponge bath and do all this stuff. Like they're not just gonna assume. That's the problem when you assume that the government's just gonna take care of everything and Social Security is gonna be right there for me. Well, I don't need to actually help people in my own life. I don't need to help the homeless in my own life. The government's gonna take care of them. They're gonna take care of all the old people. They're gonna do all this stuff. And back, when they first started Social Security, it was basically a 1-to-1 ratio between the amount of workers actively working and the amount of retirees that need money. And now I don't even know what the number is, the ratio between workers and elderly people that are broke as fuck, but it's bad. Like there's a lot of old people that are basically just screwed. And that's what happens when you kind of just assume that it's all going to work out and that the government just has your best interest.
I'd say at least our generation understands that was never going to be something for us. Like, I think I've never in my entire life, I think my parents maybe were the first one where they realized like, we're not getting that shit. And I've never in my life thought like, oh, I'm going to get Social Security, psych. No, that's going to have the amount of huge economic crashes we've seen even in our lifetime. We're all pretty young, we're all 27. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
From personal experience, my dad is little older. He's pretty much on the older side, so he's retired and he does get Social Security, but even that is like not that much. It's just kind of like he constantly, at an age where he shouldn't be worrying about it, but he constantly thinks about essentially getting a part-time job just to like have a better, like living standard. But it's just, it's rough, Yeah, so looking at that, it's like, oh yeah, well, I guess I'm just gonna work forever, so I might as well find something I like.
Hey, in that case, I would try to get like a work from home call center type deal or something. You know what I mean? Where you're just like,
that's what we're all doomed. That's what we're all doomed to. That is what retirement's gonna look like for our generation. Is gonna be just being
I've also
good customer support.
I've also fully accepted that I'm probably never gonna retire. Like. Not for lack of finances, because I do intend to, make more money than I do right now, but just as like a rule, I'm like, I'm just going to go hard.
Well, that's what they say. They're like, retirement kills more people than anything, because people just
you lose purpose.
You lose drive.
The
a lot of people turn to depression, loneliness.
That kills. That literally kills.
And when people say retire, but they don't necessarily mean I'm just gonna stop doing everything and just hang out until I die. Like that's not really what retirement means, because there's all these fucking YouTube millionaires or whatever. They're like, I retired at 33 or whatever, and it's like, yeah, but they're still gonna be doing shit.
To make
but it's
money.
after that, when you retire, it more means just, at least in my understanding, it more just means that you don't have to have a consistent wage all the time to be able to survive. Like you're good, but then you can just do passion projects. And it's like, if you have those passion projects and you have things that you want to do, that's like when people get into politics or they get into all sorts of other things. If you have all that stuff that carries you on, that you actually care about, and you don't have to worry about money, then that's good. But if you just have nothing going on, you have no prospects, and you have nothing in your life, then it's like, yeah, retirement sucks, because then you're just like, I guess I'm gonna just watch TV.
I guess in that
know.
sense, for me, retirement wouldn't really be all that different from where I'm at right now, because it's like we pretty much just almost exclusively focus on passion projects, and it's like even how I make my main source of income, it's like video editing. That's like a passion of mine, and it's like it's fun. I enjoy it, so I don't know.
And
That's
it's like
kinda
even Bill Gates like retired, like he's done with Microsoft or whatever for several like over a decade now. But I mean, he's still doing all sorts of shit, and we'll be getting into that. What Bill Gates has got going on.
Shall we press forward?
But
here?
yeah,
let's keep it moving.
So now we get into the really spicy shit, dude. Okay, okay. Let's see. We got
were at
digital
95,
cash is sort of just a continuation of the early sort of part of cryptocurrency.
And then we got Europe biting our swag, bro. They made the euro.
Yeah. So this was 1999. So basically after World War II, a lot of these countries started the idea. It was what's it called? The Treaty of Rome was in like the 50s, I think, or maybe a little bit later. But that was essentially the beginning of the European Union. All these countries they're like, we're gonna become one giant. What do you call it? Sort of a commercialized zone, right? The idea is that we're gonna all share in commerce and tourism and all this stuff, and it kind of works sort of like the United States in a way, where it's like the idea was to get all on the same currency, which we now have, which Europe, a lot of Europe has, which is the euro. Besides, the UK. That was like their whole thing with Brexit. It was like, no, we're not doing euro. We're getting out of that. We're still doing the British pound.
Yeah, right.
And a few other countries still have their own currencies too. But before that, every single European country had their own currency. And so the European Union kind of got together. It's like, I guess you could kind of think of it like sort of like the United States, because most of these European countries are the size of a state.
Yeah.
It kind of was the Maastricht Treaty or whatever.
Yeah, so we had the Maastricht Treaty, established the European Union and paved the way for the euro and created EU citizenship. So basically, you could go between a lot of these EU countries and everything's cool. You take a train from one place to the next, and you don't have to deal with passports. You don't have to deal with customs. It's
no conversion.
It's right. You don't have to deal with the currency conversion. Yeah. And then so eventually they worked their way up to 1999. They kind of set the deadline as we're going to all have this one same currency. There was a lot of fighting against that, but that's what a lot of them ended up going with.
I wish I put the year on there for the treaty, but I do believe it was like 92 or something like that.
Yeah.
I want to say.
Or the Maastricht Treaty was 90. It was like in the 90s, I think. But there were some other kind of intermediary steps before that.
So it's really interesting how we have DigiCash being first sort of like proposed in 95, and then within the decade the euro existed basically 4 years later. Yeah.
But they basically set the deadline as being 1999 back in the 70s or whatever.
Okay. Yeah.
So they established that. They're like, we're going to do this by 1999.
They just didn't know it would be digital back then. So
yeah.
Because
how
could they?
Is the euro digital?
It is a digital, or it was digital for the first couple of years, from what I understand.
That's what they were saying, is that it didn't have a full rollout. It was implemented like, there was like a 3-year period. It wasn't fully in circulation until about 2002.
Yeah, so by 2002, the banknotes and the coins actually existed.
Which is smart, because again, like we were just saying, you can't do like overnight changes of stuff, because you're just going to have people running and hiding all their money under a mattress, or B, you're going to ruin the economy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they basically, I don't know exactly how they did it. I was watching a video. They triangulated the prices between all these different countries' currencies and kind of just tried to squish them all together in one value that was sort of at parity with the dollar.
Supposedly, it worked relatively well.
In some places better than others, because like
I'm sure.
I heard about in Spain when they switched over to the euro, it was like a huge thing. Like it used to be like you go down to the corner store or whatever, you get a fucking bagel and a newspaper and a coffee or whatever, and each of those things were $1, and you're like, okay, $3. But then overnight, when they started doing the euro, it was like, oh no, it's the same. It's €1 for the bagel, €1 for the coffee, €1 for the whatever. But they're like, yeah, but that's like costs 3 times as much money in reality. So
Yeah.
it just, a lot of things went up insanely in price.
Just 300% inflation.
Yeah, like on not on everything, but it definitely caused some fucking problems.
Yeah, they had some growing pains for sure.
Yeah. Again, it seems like a certain notorious individual was a fan of the euro, though, huh? Notorious. Saddam Hussein in 2000 announces oil trade in euros instead of the U.S. dollars. Yeah. Iraq was facing sanctions from the U.S. in the 1990s, and to get them to withdraw from Kuwait and reveal their supposed weapons of mass destruction.
So yeah, they're not fans of us already, but from that just alone.
Yeah.
Dude,
it's really interesting, and we could do more on Saddam Hussein and like some of this other stuff later. But
super interesting character.
Yeah, because we were looking into it earlier today. And like, what's the deal with Saddam Hussein? Where did he get his start? Apparently, so Saddam Hussein was part of a 6-man squad that the CIA tasked with assassinating the Iraqi prime minister in 1959. So when he was like pretty young, he was basically hired by the CIA to stage a coup and basically mutiny the existing Iraqi government. And then so this is literally what happens over and over and over. It's like on Dave Smith's podcast, what he says in the intro, the intro video, the theme song of his podcast. It's like, if you want to know who America's next enemy is, look at who they're funding right now.
Yep.
Ukraine. So Saddam was basically hired as like the CIA's guy. Like, you're gonna go in and reshape Iraq in the way that we want you to. And then as time went along, he actually started kind of siding more with the USSR. He was like very against the US. And eventually it led to him doing all sorts of, war crimes and shit that he eventually got killed for. But he basically wanted to support, or he basically wanted to trade oil in euros instead of dollars, which was like a big deal. Because again, when the US goes off the gold standard, they are not relying on gold to be their backup for their currency. They're relying on oil. So that's why it's colloquially kind of known as the petrodollar.
Which, by the way, there's not an actual official implementation or system for. It's just kind of one of those things that became associated together. Yeah.
It's just the de facto. It's just the way it is.
Yep.
Well, it's also interesting because, he's probably got affiliates in British Petroleum, too, because they're one of the oldest facilitators of oil production in the world, and they've also staged several coups in Egypt against like Nasser and stuff. They had a bunch of different things where they tried to get America involved, and America was like, no, that's not our problem about your oil money. And so now it's not a problem until Saddam Hussein says, oh, fine, we're going to run this oil game in the euros, and then that's when things get really spicy.
Man, BP out here leaving oil stains all across history, it seems, man.
Right. Well,
that's wild.
So basically the idea is, we had a little thing about OPEC in here. I think we cut it, but basically because OPEC was started in the 60s, where it's it's like what is it called? The organization or
petroleum
exporting countries.
Yeah.
So basically all these mostly Middle Eastern countries kind of got together and formed a giant oil cartel. And part of the agreement with doing the trade, which is where Nixon kind of came in too, was, started dealing with more global trade and global, they're like, okay, you can have, you can export oil to the rest of the world, but the catch is you got to do it in dollars. And so that's kind of where the happy medium was found, right? Because it's hard to find a happy medium between Saudi Arabia and the United States. They're very different places in a lot of ways. Culturally, just morally, religiously, they're not going to get along. But it's like, hey, if you use our money to sell your oil, we're all good. Because that is what makes the fucking world go around, is oil.
Right.
It is what it is. We all want solar and wind and nuclear and all that, but oil's what it is.
Well, it's kind of funny how Dune is just basically an entire parallel about the oil trade. Arrakis, really? Arrakis, bro. Arrakis, that's what we're going to call this. Arrakis. It provides the one material that keeps the world running.
Right.
Come on.
And it's drugs.
Well,
Yeah.
It's
But,
spice.
I know the
They
spice.
used to sell that in gas stations, man. What
Oh,
they doing
yeah,
What they
yeah.
doing over here on foreign planets looking for that shit? Just go down to your local corner store.
But basically, the moral of the story is don't fuck with the oil. Don't fuck with the U.S. Don't fuck with the dollar, or they'll get you. And I
Well,
mean,
you
yes,
know, and it's like, that's in 2000. 9/11 was 2001. When did we invade Iraq the second time? Was that 2002?
2002 or 3.
2002 or 3? Nuts.
Yeah.
There's no coincidence at all. It's so obvious what it was about,
Right?
Yeah.
It's so obvious. Like,
Yeah.
and it's like, we got to take them out. Like,
Weapons of mass
Right.
destruction. you know?
Weapons of mass destruction. But here's the thing. Okay, so the official reason why Saddam Hussein was hanged was he was tried by his own country, like I forget the actual
like a tribunal.
The
was a-
Iraqi
yeah.
Special Tribune, I think.
Yeah, it was a military tribunal basically that was like, okay, back in 1982, you
used nerve gas on his own citizens to suppress a uprising.
right because I don't know,
Which is fucked.
The whole beef with the Sunnis and the Shiites is really something that the U.S. shouldn't have to give a fuck about, but because we have our fingers in every single thing in the world, then we have to know. Because okay, Saddam Hussein was a Sunni, I think, and then so he basically killed 150 or so Shiite kind of militant sort of guys with, I guess, with nerve gas.
Well, nerve gas was the whole thing is that, he used nerve gas and non-combatants were
Right.
killed with the nerve gas as well.
Right. Which
Is
goes
the whole
against
problem.
what?
With nerve
like-
gas, you can't use, anybody uses nerve gas, period.
That's
It's war crimes.
The
You're going.
Geneva Convention, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
but I
can't
mean,
use
Iraq's
that.
not even part of that, is it?
Doesn't matter.
But
Yeah,
right,
doesn't-
even then they
matter.
were like,
Doesn't
no,
matter, yeah.
Doesn't
but,
matter.
But here's the question for you: if he had never gone against the dollar, would that have ever come to pass?
I mean, he's always
that's
been
curious,
criticized.
yeah.
He's always been criticized for it. It's always been like the stain that's been like put up front because
Right.
it is easily the worst thing he did.
Right.
Well, I mean,
Like the most
so-
most despicable thing. for sure.
Despicable, yes. In terms of quelling an uprising, they were trying to get rid of him essentially. These 140
Yeah, they're
military
trying to assassinate him.
forces.
Yeah. So that stuff's crazy though. It's also crazy to think that that's the 80s that happened. That something with such a barbaric weapon. That's what I'm saying. It is a barbaric method
Oh, for sure.
of combat was used so recently. That's
Right.
like in our parents' lifetime.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
The
Right.
symptoms of that are extremely unpleasant and include liquid coming out of every hole in your body.
Yeah, it's the worst. It's like on the level of nukes, but even worse, I think. Because
Yeah.
at least with nukes, you're vaporized. You're
I mean,
cooked, like,
nukes
instantly.
are practically humane by comparison.
Yeah, no, like it's super inhumane. It's the most
Right.
despicable shit to use nerve gas. Like,
Yeah.
Right. There's plenty of other world leaders that have done things that could be considered crimes against humanity that were not like hanged on national television.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
that part too, though, it is really clear what it was about. And again, the fact that it was on TV, we all saw
To
that
send
on
a
TV
message, yeah.
as a kid. We all saw that
Quite a
on
message.
TV as a
Yeah,
kid.
yeah,
And what other world leaders have you seen? Well, hey, there's another world
That's
leader
calling
actually.
up some deep memories, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
So he was hanged in 2006, but in 2001 is when BRICS came together.
Getting
so
bricked up.
again, that's the allegiance of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The first four were initially grouped as BRIC or the BRICS. By Goldman Sachs economist Jim O'Neill, who coined the term to describe fast-growing economies that would collectively dominate the global economy by 2050. South Africa was added in 2010.
I find it interesting that it was a Goldman Sachs guy that coined the term, and then they were just like, you know what, that's dope as shit. It's
got a nice ring to it.
Fucking with that,
Yeah,
yeah. And now they have a whole organization and website based upon it.
It's better than G7.
Yeah.
They got to get rid of one of the countries in
I know.
G7 so that it
Be
can be
like
like a
G6.
G6.
yeah, that plane's a little too heavy to take off right now.
So let's see. The BRICS have a combined area of 39 million and some change kilometers. So 15 million square miles.
Yeah.
And an estimated total population of about 3.21 billion.
Yeah.
So they basically outweigh the US by like 10 to 1 when you're talking population.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So 26.7% of the world's land surface and
Yeah.
almost 42% of the whole population of Earth.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Those
That
are
might
like
be-
those are all the other biggest countries other than well, not South Africa. It's
That
not
might
that big,
be-
but
South
isn't
Africa
that-
has a lot of natural resources, though. That's the
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
They have a lot of copper and a lot of what's it for the phones and stuff?
lithium.
Lithium,
and
yeah,
cobalt.
and cobalt, yeah.
I think the 41.5% might be slightly outdated though, because isn't the world's population
Probably even more now, dude.
I mean, that would make sense if that was at the time, like
Yeah.
2001. That's
Didn't
still.
we just
I
break
mean, the
8
land.
billion, like recently?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So the land. I mean, the land mass is never going to change, obviously, much. But like, yeah, the population. But still,
That's nuts, dude.
That's insane. It's
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
grown.
probably
actually. Yeah.
growing disproportionately
Yeah.
faster than
Yeah.
than the U.S.
Yeah, so brick is not a drop in the pond. It is indeed a brick in the pond.
Right. So basically the whole crux of this is what we're leading up to is that BRICS are trying to form their own reserve currency. And just recently these countries like have began not using the dollar anymore. They're abandoning the dollar, which is bad. It's bad for us, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, again, it's like the fact that 2021 saw 25% of all the money that ever got made was just in that 1 year.
Right.
That's horrible for the world economy. It really is. It's terrible because, again, it's like we're the global superpower. We're the bully. We're Team America World Police. You know, we come through, and if you don't do what we want, we're going to, mess up your whole game. And it's just bad that, I don't blame the rest of these world leaders and the people of these other countries too for losing faith in what America is, when clearly as we've gone through, they're unreliable.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I mean, obviously, like the centralized currency sort of deal has been a globalist wet dream forever and ever. But it's like, how do you get an entire population of people, something like the size of the United States, to get on board with it? It's like, well, maybe if you just crash the economy for a couple of years, print, trillions of dollars worth of money, and consequently, and in parallel, destroy like huge swaths of the world economy as well. Everybody's hurting, right? So now we all have to figure out what the fuck we can do to, not have this kind of shit happen again, basically.
Notice everything we've gone over is essentially a change that has happened amidst an either economic or a socio-economic crisis of some sort.
Yeah.
That is when as a society, world society, we are the most malleable. We are the most open to change because our backs are to the wall in some type of way. Yeah.
Right.
So do you think in this situation they created the problem and the solution for this? Like, do you think that was the goal of COVID-19 long term, is to consolidate massive financial
I think
power into CBDCs?
I think that it was a beneficial side effect for them. Again, don't let a good disaster go to waste.
Yes.
It was we saw it already. Tons of governments were very, very eager to exert their power, and I think that the financial collapse and the financial impact of it was where a lot of people wanted to step in and say, fine, it's time to lay waste to the earth so we can grow whatever we want from the bottom up. That's what a lot of people were saying the Green New Deal was about. They're like, it's not about protecting the earth, it's about restructuring the economy in a way that will be most beneficial to the people who want the Green New Deal to happen.
Who are restructuring.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Who are pulling the strings. I think a lot of these, and this is the crazy thing with, when you're an entity like the government, or a lot of these just multi-billion-dollar corporations that have so much sway in the world, it's like, in a way, anything that can happen, you can be opportunistic about. Any bad thing that happens, it's like these people, I think, are really at a level where it's like plan A through Z, where it's like, it's like to every single point where it's like, planting Saddam as the CIA asset, and then, okay, we're going to have you be the thing. But, we've got like these like 20 contingencies in case that goes south, or if it goes this way, or if it goes that way, then we'll just do this, and then we'll do that. And then, okay, now Russia's a part of it. Oh, damn. Okay, well, let's just do this, do that. Right. It's just like,
there's no emotion involved to them. It's just a giant heat map of the earth. Heat map correlating to where all the fucking money is, basically. And it's like, how do I get it from over here to here?
Which
like,
is
what do I need to do to make that happen?
But yeah, it's some. There's a select, very few amount of people that are essentially the ones that are doing that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that are able to.
It's all just a big fucking game of Monopoly.
And it all ties back to a lot of it. Really just does tie back to the military industrial complex too. At the end of the day, is because I mean over the whole. I mean, we could do a whole episode on this about U.S. and Russia, the way they're interrelated, and the way that Trump, you know, for better or for worse, was trying to sort of ease relations between the U.S. and Russia. Because, I mean, it's like Russia's got a lot of natural resources. We could do a lot of commerce with them. Things could be chill, bro. It's like, they're not the USSR that they were, you know, but.
Well, he was making good relations with Saudi Arabia, too.
Yeah.
And
right,
that's
like,
why gas prices were chill for a minute.
Dude, where it's like, yeah, it's like, okay, they're all bad guys. You know, like Putin's a bad guy. Trump and Biden, they're bad guys. You know, Saudi Arabia, they got a lot of bad guys. We're all pieces of shit. It's really at the end of the day what it is.
Yeah.
But
I mean, there's not exactly a book on how to not be one. So
right. But really at the end of the day, the goal of the military industrial complex was to influence the American people and to influence the media to basically push all this really Russophobic, you know, Cold War 2.0 kind of stuff to get America and Russia to be at odds with each other. And it's like, look at what we've done. You know, we just backed out of Afghanistan finally, which it's like, hey, at least we did it. But look at all the fucking weapons we left there. And it's like, whoops, well, it's like when you move out of a house with someone that you don't like anymore and you're like, I'm not going to go back to get my fucking leaf blower.
Yeah, bro.
You know, like,
yeah.
I don't want to deal with that. So we just leave all these weapons there. And then we're like, well, so there's no real war. Unfortunately for them, during the last 4 years, during Trump, there were no new wars. So they're like, we've just been sitting on this stockpile of F-16s and all this bullshit. We need to start moving these fucking weapons out. You know, all these companies, Halliburton, Raytheon, etc.
Yep.
They have to they have to make more bombs and more jets. Like, they don't make any more money unless they do that. And they make everything else too. All the rations, all the food, everything down to laundry services for the troops.
Right.
They hire people from the Philippines for like pennies and to do the laundry.
That's interesting because how much weapons manufacturing does the U.S. do of its own volition, right? They partnership with these companies, and if they want weapons, these companies have to stay alive, right? Like,
Right.
Well, they won't
it's like,
pay. They won't
there
pay.
has to be more war, which is why we've been giving all these weapons and all this money to the Ukraine, so that we have to make more for ourselves. Oh no, now we've depleted all the weapons for ourselves. Now we got to make more for ourselves. And so that's really what it's all about, is just making a shit ton of money so that they can fund war and push everything to the fucking brink of nuclear war, just so that they can make more money on, you know. And it's like, whatever, dude. It's like, I don't know. Is that a pro or anti-capitalist fucking statement? I think libertarians and commies and whatever would all kind of agree. It's like, this is a pretty bad system that we've got going on right now.
yeah.
That's oligarchy. That's not necessarily capitalism. You know, that's like an oligarchical situation on a global scale. Let's see what else we got going on here, though, because I think we're getting a little long tooth here. Let's see.
Okay.
Saddam, covered that pretty much.
Right.
Yeah. The end of Saddam. Yeah.
Yeah. Rest in piss.
Bitcoin.
And then Bitcoin pops out of nowhere.
The new kid on the block.
Right.
People thought it was impossible to do. Created
Right.
fully decentralized currency where there's no central governing authority. But
Right.
Just real quick, how much more shit do we have? Just curious.
We just got a couple of things.
yeah, there's like 2 or 3 more
Okay.
items here.
All right.
Yeah,
all
what was
right.
them?
All right. Yeah. Bitcoin, man. Okay. Let's go full screen, man. All right. Christian was saying earlier, he was proposing the question, is Bitcoin a long game by the powers that be to get everybody to lean into a centralized digital currency? And I actually don't think so, because I
hope not.
I think Bitcoin was made by scumbags for scumbags. You feel me? Like, I think that's what Bitcoin...
I have one counter to that argument that I thought of, because I was agreeing with you earlier on that too. But Bitcoin being a thing created by scumbags for scumbags, right, implying that people are trading Bitcoin for things like drugs and other things on
Silk Road.
on the dark web. I would bounce back to you that the dark web was indeed created by the U.S. government in itself, And the point of it being anonymous and open is so that they can get away with doing illegal shit too on it, and nobody will fucking know. Yeah,
Right, like
Yeah, yeah.
if you're going
Again,
full,
the duality of technology.
right,
Yeah.
and I don't think that this is the case, but it's like if it was invented by some corporate mogul type of guy, don't you think somebody would be out there being like trying to take credit for Bitcoin because it's like the greatest fucking idea of all time, right?
I don't think it was a person. I think Satoshi Nakamoto is a fake name for a fake person that doesn't really exist. There's not one guy that's just going to sit down there and launch a currency that just changes and revolutionizes the entire economic structure of the planet.
Right.
That doesn't.
But
that
who is- so
that kind
who
of
is it?
person doesn't just come around. I think it is potentially something like the CIA or some
Yeah.
other group like that.
That's
right?
what I'm saying,
Well,
right?
the
If
first
you're
thing that came to
Mysterious organization.
Right.
Origins, I should say.
Yeah, because people keep saying if you found out, or like these hyper rich people, I keep seeing clips of. They're like, if you found out who the the creator of Bitcoin was, you would run as fast as you could in the other direction. And I'm like,
Maybe.
If it was the CIA, you're fucking right. Like,
Dude,
Well,
right,
the first
right.
thing first thing that came to mind when you said that though, was like Iran Contra scandal, and I'm like, oh yeah, the government actually probably would use encrypted form of
Right.
payment to pay criminals to do criminal activities.
Right,
Which
exactly.
it has a huge precedent for, because again, we were paid, drug runners from South America to sell crack cocaine in America.
Yeah.
Like that's already been a thing. So
Right.
yeah, which again, the rise of drug use and drug distribution did immensely rise because of things like the Silk Road too.
Yep.
Right. So that's what I'm kind of worried about. I'm like, was this just created by some like tech genius types that were like, oh, I want to create this decentralized currency that's going to be so great for the world? Because the way that they're going to try and sell you on CBDCs, they're going to say, because everybody's cool with Bitcoin now. I mean, a lot more people than a few years ago. I mean, people have gotten burned on it. But like, for example,
After
like,
the GameStop thing, everybody knows.
everybody knows about Bitcoin, and it's become more of a household name.
Right.
And it's like, my grandma has fucking Bitcoin in her, like, in her,
You could go to a Coinstar and turn your coins into Bitcoin now.
And so when the CBDC comes along, it's gonna be they're gonna make it seem like, oh, it's cool like Bitcoin, because they're trying to hopefully get all of the nerds that like Bitcoin to go along with it.
Yeah, they're going to play on your ignorance of the technical details and the difference between what a central bank digital currency is and what cryptocurrency actually is.
Right.
Right.
So
Yeah, because they're already trying to the Fed now is already trying to market it like it's a Bitcoin. It's like, no, it's not. It's
So
not.
Didn't
if
we
you-
have some slides that were just
Yeah.
flat out lies?
if you pull up on the Unicoin
yeah,
website, we have it on here, right?
The Unicoin.
I think it's back at the beginning. Even farther.
yeah,
right there.
This one?
Left side.
This one?
That one.
Yep, the DCMA, bro. So we got CBDCs, Crypto 2.0, the Unicoin Network, right? So go for, okay.
There we go.
Global Decentralized Digital
Check-
Financial Services Network.
Check out that Scientology piece of work right there too. By the way,
Bro,
Really?
they got all those laptops there, bro. You already know Hunter Biden's laptops on there.
I know, look at that right there. Yeah,
Fucking
exactly.
scumbags, bro.
Exactly. Right. Well, because where was it on the page that we found that we're like, wow, this is a complete
Just tap through.
oxymoron.
Right. CBDC is cryptocurrency reimagined for banking. Digital currency public monetary system. I do believe it was on the Crypto 2.0 page.
Okay.
Potentially. Yeah, a
Right.
global
Alright.
decentralized digital finance
that is a flat lie.
services network for central banks and financial institutions.
That doesn't. Yeah,
so
it's like
they're
so
decentralizing it between like a handful of like 4 to 5 of these like global currency, central bank digital currencies, basically.
I love how it says it's in big white text, a global decentralized digital finance service network for central banks and financial institutions.
Yeah, it's
Right,
hella the
it's small.
footnote,
Yeah,
like
it's
the
the
hypertext at
asterisk,
the bottom.
yeah.
It's the dude talking fast on the radio.
Yeah. Well, no. So it's like, is this kind of stuff gonna just be? Because listen, right now what we've got is,
the
what
Uber
everybody,
coin.
what like the Alex Jones level, like they're gonna do global currency is going to be, whatever. That's when all of these countries supposedly get together and form one big giant currency. So you have to get the G7 and BRICS to come together to fuck you in the ass.
So
which is hard to do.
I think of like,
So what's more dangerous?
but okay, so I don't know this for sure, but the comparison in my head is like the Ethereum blockchain, right? Being a platform for the creation of other things. Unicoin is going to be the platform for the CBDCs, but it's like they're saying it's decentralized, and the whole point of cryptocurrency is to decentralize every single transaction to every single individual, right?
Right.
So it's I don't know how exactly this is decentralized or not some sort of central authority when it's like all of the central authorities just joined together.
I mean, hey, maybe they're trying to do this so that something like a BRICS doesn't come out on top over them, Like,
well, this isn't even
definitely.
this isn't necessarily like currency.
It's a
This
network
is a services
between-
network.
right.
It's a platform, right? So like you need infrastructure for these sort of things to run on, right? So Unicoin is that services network.
Right.
right. But then if it's still, they could still convince people that, like, say, it's still I think it's still like a platform for them to be able to like funnel everything through bare minimum, like.
It's
Potential.
decentralized between all the governments. The governments in relation to each other have there's no central authority between them. But amongst their own country and their own people, they have the overwhelming authority on you.
Right.
So it's really just a loose network of all of like the sinister countries getting together and being able to fuck you in the ass.
Whoever's gonna be in charge of this service is gonna be extremely powerful.
Okay, well, funny you say that because the DCMA founded, or the executive director of which I should say is Daryl Hubbard. He partnershiped particularly with the Chinese Communist Party to develop the Unicoin network.
Right.
So they have their hands explicitly all over this baby.
And and maybe it could be sort of a good thing. I don't know, in the sense that now you can't run into this situation where a couple years ago when the Ukraine invasion started, what's it called? The SWIFT payment processing system, which is what all these different countries use to process, payment between different countries.
Right.
They basically just shut out Russia from that. They sanctioned Russia and said, you can't use SWIFT anymore. So now it's like everybody in Russia, through no fault of their own, they're just like a random Russian citizen. It's like, dude, what if they're trying to run an online business and they can't even use PayPal? They can't use anything.
So yeah, they were basically like doomed to a financial collapse.
Yeah.
Just left to die basically.
Again,
that action,
another one of just the principal dangers of such strong globalization and like centralization on that scale. They can just do whatever they want.
On-off switch.
On-off switch. And I think that was the first time I've really seen something that crazy like that. Like, you always imagine it happening where it's like, how about we just stop doing business with China? How about we just stop doing business with Mexico or whoever?
Right.
And they did just stop doing business with Russia, and they stopped taking Russian oil. And it's, you're like, oh my God, the implications are actually really big because now gas prices are shooting through the roof again.
Right.
And then the Russians are pissed at us.
Right. And so if you're the United States, you can get away with just not doing business with another country. But if you're a smaller country, like, say, Libya, for example, in the words of Hillary Clinton, we came, we saw, he died.
Yeah.
This is what happened with...
Did we touch on Gaddafi yet?
That's what I'm getting to right now. Is this is kind of like, we're kind of like getting a little bit ahead of it, but, very similar to the Saddam Hussein situation, kind of. So... Muammar Gaddafi,
Got some chats.
Oh yeah, Ritual Production says, "Where can I get these sweet new federal coins?"
I'm sure
The
they'll email
Uber
you.
coins. Yeah, the Uber
I
coins.
want to sell my 500K dink doing.
Hey, cash into the Fed, bro.
That is a strategy of all
Right.
time.
It'll be like a gun buyback program, but for cryptos. They're like, give us all your Dogecoin and we'll give you Fed coin.
Which, by the way, I love the branding that they're using, the sort of iconography for the DCMA in terms of the central bank digital currencies. They have the literal gold coin with the U on it that looks like the Bitcoin, just to try to make you think that it's like a cryptocurrency.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the imagery is a fake even.
It's all about the branding.
They know what they're
Exactly,
doing.
yeah.
But and then
fucked up.
when we get to these currencies, it's gonna be what's called programmable central bank digital currencies. So they can determine what. Not only, it's not like money where money's fungible. You can spend money on anything you want. It's going to be like, this is for bread. This is for meat. You've eaten too much meat. You got to eat the bugs now, whatever, you know, and this is like what like Glenn Beck and like conspiracy stuff are kind of like yelling about. Yeah. But it's like, there's some truth to that. If basically they could just turn everything into EBT food stamps, right? Because, you know, if you got, you know, if you just need a little bit of help with groceries, they're going to be like, here, sign up for EBT. We'll give you your tax money back in... But you can buy for groceries. But you see on signs everywhere you go, you know, no EBT for hot food. So it's like, so what? You can buy fucking Oreos, but you can't buy a warm meal. Oh, okay.
Yep.
You know, it's gonna be like that for everything. And we're already getting to the point where people are getting canceled from PayPal left and right.
Venmo.
Except now, every single transaction, they're all centralized into one place. So you don't have to have the government banging down the back doors of these, you know, these big financial gateway platforms.
Right.
To say, hey, you know, we better deplatform this guy. He's causing some problems socially, you know, or politically or whatever have you.
Dude, you know that YouTube channel Trigonometry? They just got banned from PayPal.
Oh wow,
yeah, and they're not even that extreme, dude. Like there's definitely some more.
Basically,
there's definitely some extreme people, you know, like that I'm not a fan of, like, you know, Nick Fuentes or whatever, who's like, I don't even know what his fucking deal is, but he got banned from PayPal a long time ago.
But those two guys are just a couple of fucking like nerds, right? Like, well, they're not doing it, or specifically the guys that run Trigonometry. They're like just a couple of fucking
they're
nerds.
A couple British nerds or whatever.
Yeah. Like, and they're not exactly wilding out or anything.
No, they're very like moderate kind of. Like they're pretty like milquetoast.
Buttoned up.
So for them to get deplatformed is actually pretty spooky.
It's crazy, right? I mean, it could happen to anybody, but
I mean, hey, that's centralization in media. Too, you know, again, we were just saying control of money flow and control of information flow are like the two most important aspects. And again, we're in the 5th generational warfare.
Oh, control of information and emotions, which, by the way, Facebook has been manipulating people's emotions through social experiments and that kind of thing for years.
Whole time.
So
whole time.
Makes you curious what is happening on other platforms.
Big time social engineering kicked off on Tumblr in 2012, bro. I'm telling you, big time, dog, big time. I was there. I seen it. It was fucked up. Like, but anyways, too, you know what else is fucked up? This is what happens when you try to create a global reserve currency to rival the dollar.
Yeah.
Let's take a look here. What is this man is most iconically known for? He died a very horrible death.
A very horrible death.
He was a very bad man, too. Don't get me wrong. He was a very bad person.
That's the kind of death I wouldn't wish on anyone.
But they make sure to know that if you challenge fucking the IMF, they let everybody know that you had a humiliating death, you know?
Yeah.
And because Muammar Gaddafi... Go ahead.
So, if it wasn't bad enough for Saddam to get hanged on national TV, in 2011, Muammar Gaddafi, the longtime... I guess dictator, ruler, whatever you call him, of Libya.
Yeah. Dictator, you could say dictator.
Dictator.
Yeah.
Of Libya, was, how should I say this? Bayoneted up the ass to death.
Yeah.
And that's what happened.
With a flagpole.
Yeah.
With a flagpole.
And we know this because it was recorded, right?
Yeah, no,
there's video.
Yeah, there's video.
Good stuff.
Don't look for it.
Don't look for it, but
but it's there.
See, the internet used to be a much freer place because you could just like be 12 and see unspeakable horrors on the internet.
But now you'll go to prison for doing that same exact thing, you know.
And so
you got to be careful what you watch.
So Muammar Gaddafi, not a good guy. He's a war criminal like all the rest, you know. Did all sorts of terrible things. But
dictator for decades, right? Or I want to say maybe a decade and a half.
It was decades, yeah.
But it's funny, man, because like I went on a video just watching an old video of Saddam Hussein from like the 70s, and every single comment that was in English, a lot of them were just in like Arabic or Farsi or whatever. They're like, all the comments were like, "Love Saddam Hussein, greatest. He's the GOAT." Top G Saddam, you know, like,
oh my God.
Like literally ended with all like hella thumbs up, like they're like Saddam Hussein great. So I'm like, damn, we have kind of a different idea of Saddam Hussein versus people in the Middle East who are commenting on this. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's representative.
Similarly with this, though, there's other African leaders that have spoke about Muammar Gaddafi in a positive light because, again, in these WikiLeaks dropped the details that Gaddafi had 143 tons of gold and silver, which he was going to use to establish a pan-African currency, which a lot of people have said. Here, let's go back to full screen because that's just the main point of that we need. So a lot of people have said, too, it's like it's unrealistic for him to think that you could have really even pulled it off, but the fact that he was going to try is a big deal. Like it's because Africa's struggling, of course.
Well, clearly there's something to it. I mean, like he made some people quake in their boots, right? And that's ultimately why he died. So there's nothing to his plan there,
right? And it really was a U.S.-backed rebellion kind of situation. Because remember, there was a whole thing. They were like, Libyan rebels were, we're supportive of Libyan rebels. Basically,
moderate
ISIS.
rebels.
It was basically ISIS, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the moderate rebels. I remember that. That was the whole thing. And so, and again, the fact that he got Gaddafi'd. Getting Gaddafi'd is a phrase now.
I think that's just us that say that. But,
I've heard it.
But you guys can start using it.
Yeah. Feel free to use it.
But,
boy.
Yeah, spin free game for you.
But it's definitely, again, the fact that other African leaders do speak. They're like he was a real visionary because there was an infrastructure project too.
Yeah, so one of the things that Gaddafi did successfully that was a major thing. It was 1983, the Great Man-Made River Project, which is the world's largest irrigation project of any kind across the world, still exists to this day and services millions of people. So his infrastructure goals specifically were very big. Like he was a vision guy for sure.
It was his Autobahn.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
That's not good. I mean, it's what it is. It's like he's a fucking terrible guy, but man-made river project. And guess what? The first place to bomb was when the U.S. started bombing Libya was this giant irrigation system.
Crazy,
they bombed
right?
the factories where they were making the actual pipes to use this. So it's always masked as like this humanitarian sort of thing. We got to go in because these guys are so bad. They're terrorists. They're terrorizing their citizens. We got to install democracy in these countries. That's not what it's about. If it's a humanitarian thing,
kill some people.
Because now, I mean, everybody knows what happened in Libya after. It's like the same thing as Iraq, where after Saddam died, you got 2 years of brutal civil war between the Sunnis and the Shiites, and kind of a similar thing happened. I don't know all the details, but a similar thing happened when you create a power vacuum of a dictator.
Yeah.
Someone else is going to hop in that's probably of the opposition party, and it's going to be like the whole thing. They're going to be just as bad. And then for a while, there was open air slave trade that was going on in Libya. I don't know if it still is. It probably is. Not as open as it was, but there was a time there at the beginning where it was literally on YouTube. You could watch slave auctions on YouTube.
That's horrible.
Crazy.
Wow.
Like,
there was a ton of videos, huh?
Back then, dude. Which is that's what we grew up seeing on the internet, which is why we are the way we are now.
12 to 15 was the real peak of that.
8th grade, just seeing a whole bunch of them like everywhere, like unescapable.
You would accidentally just kind of come across them.
Funny how those are nice and cleaned up now.
Right.
Right. Shoot.
Well, and the only reason that we know,
even with Saddam, it's the reason why we're in Iraq for so long after is because it was just a total shit show. He kept everything. At least there was order. He was a bad guy, but there was
order in the chaos.
Yeah, there was. It was just totally power grab after that, and that's where you had all the terrorist groups moving in, trying to take over and stuff. That was the real thing.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's not like we funded them either, too, or just propagated that entire ensuing situation.
Yeah.
Anyway, continue.
So yeah, man. I mean, it's just crazy because again, they if you do stuff to challenge these large institutions, they make sure that your legacy will be tarnished.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Even if it is literally the greatest, largest spanning humanitarian project on the planet.
Well, there's no,
even
if
never even heard of that. You never learn about that in history class.
I didn't know that existed until we decided to research this episode.
And so if there can be the G7 and there can be, the petrodollar and there can be the euro and there can be all these things and these giant massive currencies, it's like, well, why can't Africa have its own version of that?
because they got a lot of resources.
They have
all the
all
shit.
the
Yeah.
resources
Yeah.
is the thing
Yeah.
with that. That's what
A
they
shit
want
ton.
Yeah.
Africa to stay
So-
destabilized. It's fucked up.
It's all that
It's
control,
just as bad
man.
as it's just as bad as the Middle East, bro. Where they just went in, just carved it up, and said, "Y'all are never gonna win." It's fucked up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Such is how it is.
Doomer note. But anyways, yeah.
Let's see.
we
Yeah,
have
Doom or
some
no,
more
but let's
slides?
see. Yeah, let's get a
that-
wrap up on
that's
this.
basically it. We kind of already covered the Ukraine stuff, and
Right.
and you can keep going into that for like a million
that's a
years.
whole video
Dude,
on
this
its
has
own.
been a fucking smart boy episode. I'm just gonna suck our own dicks here for a second and say that we're
free.
dude. We're like the smartest dumb guys. We're
Yeah.
smartest dumb
That I
guys around.
personally
Hey,
know.
Yeah.
Go ahead and just get the wide view on that conspiracy board.
Oh,
the
yeah,
whole
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
real
yeah.
Oh
quick.
yeah, let me pull it out.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Let's
because here's
look
the
what
shift
we
one.
did.
here's what we
Or
did
they
just
did.
for then. This is just for this episode, dude.
Yeah.
We got like all this stuff just for
hold
one
on.
episode.
Hold on, go to the picture real quick. The bricks
Not to
picture.
give-
Oh,
yeah.
The BRICS
There's
picture.
some media we kind of missed out on, but hey,
I just want to say, bro, the
at those
South
guys.
African president looks so happy to be there, bro. Every picture of the BRICS Union, he is just like, yes.
Which
He's
one's South
cheesed up.
Africa?
That's the far right.
Far right,
For-
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
what's
Tough-
that
tough
little
question.
comment you had on
What?
the left-hand side there?
Oh yeah, I miss the old bricks.
Oh my
Oh
god.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Because this is a few years ago. when
Yeah.
it was
They
still,
got yeah.
Brazil
Bolsonaro.
has had
women
a
has
different
a,
rep.
yeah. Brazil has a woman president now, so they got
right.
they got a lady on the team, bro. They progressive.
That's
Hey,
not
let's
why I
go.
miss the old bricks. It was just a Kanye thing. So,
Yeah.
sorry.
I'm just saying, BRICS is progressive. All right,
Yeah.
look.
Yeah, progressively.
There's actually
encroaching on our-
a whole thing where they were saying they're like, Vlad, don't come. Oh, I know, right? That guy's face,
Bolsonaro.
dude. There's a whole thing though. They're
Looks
saying
he's
like
got
Vlad.
cerebral. Never mind.
Oh my god.
He's a cerebral guy.
Well, they were saying Vladimir Putin like, don't come to the BRICS conference because like we might have to arrest you if you come.
Damn.
And so like,
Recently?
yes,
Damn, that's
yeah,
crazy.
so they were like, don't come to the BRICS conference. Like we might have to arrest you. Like, so I don't know. You know, he might just fucking go. You know, and be
That
like,
would
what?
be
You gonna
big
do it?
dick
You know,
on the table move.
he might. You know, but
well, I mean, I don't
That
know
would be
why.
a wide Putin move.
I don't know why they would be against him in particular. Like nobody else in BRICS has particular interest in Ukraine necessarily outside of Russia, right?
On a global scale, a lot of people, I think people are still involved with the IMF still, and some people are still involved with, you know, there's like the war crime. He's being like put on the table for war crimes, you know, like is what
Right.
they're putting Putin up, you know, that's how it's being
What
propped
they're
up
throwing
as.
against him.
Yeah. So
Right.
that's, I
Interesting.
think some of them probably have like a weird obligation.
Did you see Putin give a whole speech about, like, you know, because recently Trump was doing the CNN town hall and he was refusing to call Putin a war criminal, not because he's not, but because it's just, that's bad relations. You can't negotiate with someone that you're calling a war criminal.
Yeah.
You can't say like, I want to negotiate with Russia and also be like, you should die.
Yeah.
You know, like that's
Yeah.
just is what it is. Art of the deal or whatever, you know, fucking,
Yeah.
you know, 4-dimensional chess. But Putin actually gave a speech recently where he was kind of calling that out. He's like, oh, really? Basically, you're going to call me a war criminal. It's like, oh, yeah, just like Libya, Hillary. Oh, yeah, just like Iraq, George Bush. Oh, yeah, just like, you know, like just calling out everybody. It's like,
Yeah.
Not wrong.
it doesn't make what he's doing
Yeah.
good.
No, I mean, it's not like anybody forgot about these things
Right.
either, but the fact that it just constantly needs to be reiterated like that to
Yeah.
put some Americans into perspective about what's going
dude,
on.
what
It's kind of
trips
sad,
what trips
honestly.
me out about this is so tangentially related, but it's like how people have like this weird adoration for like George W. Bush and stuff these days. They're like, he's so like younger people are like, oh man,
have you seen that clip of him
Nostalgic.
recently where he's talking about weapons of mass destruction and he's means to say I think like
the unprompted invasion of Ukraine, but he
it
says
Afghanistan
Yeah,
instead.
yeah.
No, right. He's saying like Putin's so terrible for the unprompted invasion of Iraq.
And then he goes,
And he's like, I mean, Ukraine.
yeah, and then he's like, I'm 83 years old.
Yeah,
Give me
he's
a
like, I'm
break.
so-
And everybody
yeah.
just
Well,
laughs
actually,
it
no,
off. I'm
Bush
like,
is still younger than Biden.
yeah,
He's
That's
like,
pretty
he's
crazy.
75.
yeah.
That's crazy.
Biden's 75?
No, Bush is 75.
Oh, okay.
Biden's
Biden's
is like
83.
83.
Okay, you're right.
If he got reelected, he'd be 80. Or I think if he gets reelected and he does another term, he'll be 86 by the time he's done.
Okay, that was the first misinformation I said on this whole episode. I'm gonna pat myself on the back.
This is a smart boy episode.
Yeah, no.
But so listen, I mean, hey,
Hold on, pull up the view one more time, Taba. Just so glorious. Here, frame it a little more square here.
Shift 1, pull it up that full screen.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
man. That's
man.
our episode today, guys.
yeah. So maybe
Got the
best
fucking-
case scenario, all of these war criminals get hanged, and we all buy weed with Bitcoin, and we all live happily ever after. I guess that's to end it on a
We
positive.
just gotta
note.
make weed the global currency, man.
There you go.
The stoners are already on it, dude.
hash coins. Hash coins.
Hash coins.
Trailer Park Boys already thought of it.
Oh my god.
Damn it.
Speaking of coins, though, I just wanted to point out that if you guys want access to these conspiracy boards that we're building after we do our episodes, if you want to go ahead and donate, we can go ahead and publish these live for you to explore afterwards. Let us know what you think about that, though. If you want to contribute to our ever-growing conspiracy board online,
Yeah,
just let us know.
feel free to buy us a coffee on kofi.com/ZUDECAST.
Yeah,
Cool new thing.
gonna
to
get
do.
it.
Yeah. All right, boys. Any last words we got for that? That was a journey and a half.
Dude, thanks for anyone who stuck with it or watched this whole
Yeah.
thing. We're some dorks, but dude, it's been good to actually dive deep into shit and really do some research.
Yeah.
And we might be hitting on something here, man. We gotta, when we're looking at these topics, you really gotta do a lot of deep dive. And this was just really a surface level kind of explanation. This is like a topic that we could do multiple
This is like a
episodes.
10-hour video.
This is like
if
an
we really
intro,
wanted.
intro
Yeah.
to this topic, yeah.
So if you want to see more stuff like this, please let us know in the comments how dumb we are. And dude, if you know that we're wrong on something, or
Please correct us and join the
please correct us.
conversation. Yeah,
We'll read your
we
comments.
We want to know, we want to learn.
Yeah.
The Zudes love learning.
Yeah. If fart ass 69 comments, he's like, actually, yeah. If we're wrong, fart ass 69, let us know, dude. We'll take your.
We know you're
and
out
that's
there.
the fucked up thing is we'll take your word for it because we're no better than you. We're the Zudes.
That's the point. We're the Zudes. You
We're
know?
just some dumb guys desperately trying to find out the truth.
Yeah.
I'm not dumb.
Well,
Speak
I'll speak
for
for
yourself,
myself. I'll speak for myself. We're the dumb. We're either the
this
smartest
was-
dumb guys
I'll
or the
speak
dumbest
for
smart
you,
guys.
too.
Yeah.
This was the Central Bank Digital Currencies Guide for Dummies,
Yes.
All
By
right.
dummies.
Absolutely.
episode number 79.
Thanks, guys.
Ho!
Thanks for tuning.